The wrong table. How one mistake put her in a billionaire's world of blood and silk. She came for a blind date that never showed. He sat down at her table by mistake. A man with cold eyes, a $5,000 suit, and a reputation that made waiters forget how to breathe. By the time Lena Carter realized who Adrian Volkov really was, she'd already said too much, smiled too long, and let a stranger see the cracks no one else had ever noticed. One wrong table, one dangerous man, and a life she could never walk back into. If you make it to the end of this story, drop a like and tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. I want to see how far Lena's story has traveled. Stay with me. It's going to get dark before it gets beautiful. The rain in Chicago that Thursday night had a mean streak to it. It wasn't the soft kind of rain that made the skyline look like a postcard. It was the kind that came in sideways off Lake Michigan, the kind that soaked through a cheap coat in under a block and made a woman feel like the whole city was laughing at her for trying. Lena Carter pushed through it anyway. She had $43 in her checking account, a pair of black heels she'd borrowed from her neighbor Marisol, and a dress she'd bought 3 years ago for a cousin's wedding and never worn since. The dress was navy, not black. She'd wanted black. Black was forgiving. Navy made her look like she was trying, and trying was the worst thing a woman could look like on a blind date she didn't even want to be on. But Marisol had signed her up for the app. Marisol had said, "Lena, honey, you haven't been on a date since Tyler left, and Tyler left in 2022, and that is medically unacceptable." So here she was, 29 years old, 2 waitressing shifts and 1 freelance bookkeeping gig stacked on top of each other like a house of cards. A mother in hospice in Rockford who didn't always remember her name anymore. A stack of medical bills taped to the inside of her kitchen cabinet so she didn't have to see them every morning. And a reservation at a restaurant called Marchetti's. Lena had looked Marchetti's up on her phone before she left the apartment. She shouldn't have. The cheapest thing on the menu was a $42 plate of pasta. The wine list started at $90. There was a dress code listed right there on the website, refined elegance. Like the restaurant itself was standing at the door checking to see if you belonged. She didn't belong. She knew that before she opened the door. The valet at the curb gave her a look when she walked past him. Not mean, just surprised, like he'd seen her coming off the bus 2 blocks back and was now doing the math in his head. Inside, the warmth hit her like a slap. Marchetti's smelled like truffle oil and money. The floor was some kind of dark marble that caught the light from chandeliers she was pretty sure were real crystal. Every woman in the room had the kind of hair that cost $300 to maintain. Every man looked like he'd been born already knowing which fork to use. A hostess in a black dress was watching her from behind a polished walnut stand. "Good evening," the hostess said. Her voice was the professional kind of warm, the kind that was actually cold underneath. "Do you have a reservation?" Yeah," Lena cleared her throat. "Carter, Lena Carter, party of 2. I'm the first one here, I think." The hostess tapped at a tablet. Her eyebrows did something subtle. Lena caught it and pretended she hadn't. "Of course, Ms. Carter. Right this way." Lena followed her through the room and tried not to feel every single pair of eyes that slid over her and then slid away. It wasn't cruelty. That was almost worse. It was a kind of polite dismissal, like she was a draft that had come in with the rain and would leave again soon enough. The hostess sat her at a table near the back. A booth, actually. Deep leather, half circle, angled so you could see most of the room. Lena realized too late it was one of the better tables. Someone was going to have to pay for that real estate. She unfolded her napkin. Her hands were shaking a little. She put them in her lap. "Can I start you with something to drink while you wait?" "Water's fine, just water." "Still or sparkling?" Lena's mouth opened, closed. "Whichever's, tap is fine." She watched the hostess's face do absolutely nothing, and that somehow felt worse than a laugh. "Of course." Lena sat alone in the booth and tried to breathe. The guy's name was Kevin. 32, a software project manager, nice smile in his photos, had written in his bio that he loved dogs, hated seafood, and was looking for something real. Marisol had sworn he looked safe. Lena had decided that at least he looked normal, and normal was a vacation from her actual life. She checked her phone under the table. 7:04. They'd said 7. She set the phone face down and looked at the menu, because that was what people did. The menu was a thick cream-colored card with no prices on it. Lena had read about restaurants like this. The man's menu had prices. The woman's didn't. She felt her cheeks get hot. 7-Eleven, 7:19. At 7:24, her phone lit up on the table. She flipped it over too fast. Hey, something came up at work. Rain check? Lena stared at the message. 3 years since her last date. $43 in her account. A borrowed pair of heels that were already eating into her left pinky toe. A navy dress she'd ironed twice. Rain check. She typed back something she didn't mean. No worries, totally get it. With a smiley face at the end because she was the kind of woman who apologized when other people stepped on her foot. Then she put the phone down. The sensible thing was to leave. Stand up, walk out, go home, peel off the dress, cry for 20 minutes, eat cereal for dinner, and never tell Marisol what had actually happened. Lena started to stand. She'd gotten maybe an inch off the leather when a voice cut across the table. Sit down. It wasn't loud. It wasn't rude. It was the kind of voice that didn't have to be either of those things to make a person listen. Low, even, with something under it like a hand settling on the back of her neck. Lena looked up. There was a man standing at her table, tall, taller than Tyler had been, and Tyler had been 6'2". Dark charcoal suit that fit him like someone had sewn it on. Black hair, not styled, just combed back with his fingers. A jaw that looked like it had been carved to hold a grudge. And eyes. Lena would remember the eyes later, when she was trying to explain this to herself at 3 a.m. Eyes that were some color between gray and blue, and didn't really land on either. He wasn't smiling. He was looking at her the way a man looks at a problem he's about to solve. Sit down, he said again, softer this time, almost patient. You don't want to walk out in the rain. Lena sat. She didn't mean to. Her knees just bent. The man slid into the booth across from her like the table was his. He unbuttoned his jacket with one hand, the way men did in old movies, and sat back against the leather. A waiter materialized out of nowhere, already nodding before the man had said a word. McAllen. Neat. And whatever the lady would like. Water, Lena said. Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. I have water. Bring her a glass of the Sancerre, the man told the waiter, not unkindly. She's been sitting here getting stood up for 20 minutes. She's earned it. The waiter vanished. Lena stared at the man. I'm sorry, she said. I think there's been a mistake. He tilted his head slightly. Is there? I was waiting for someone. But he's not coming. I'm sorry. I don't know who you thought I was, but I'm not her. The man's mouth moved, not a smile. The suggestion of one. It was gone before Lena could be sure she'd seen it. I can see that now. Then, my guest was a woman named Sophia Reyes. She's about your height, dark hair. She was supposed to meet me here at 7. The hostess brought me to this table. He glanced briefly over his shoulder. I assume she made the same mistake I did. Lena followed his glance. The hostess was nowhere in sight. Oh. Lena felt the heat crawling up her throat again. God, I'm so sorry. Please, please, take the table. I'll just... She reached for her purse. Stay. That word again, not a question. She looked up. His face hadn't moved much, but something in it had. The amusement, if it had ever been amusement, was gone. He was studying her now, openly, the way a man studies a painting at an auction. Lena tried. I don't even know you. Adrian. What? My name is Adrian. He didn't offer a last name. He didn't offer a hand. He just said it, the way you'd put a stone down on a table between two people. And I've eaten alone in this restaurant more times than I care to count. Tonight I had other plans, and those plans canceled 15 minutes before I walked in. So did yours. He tipped his head toward her phone. I can see the message from here. Lena's hand flew to the phone, flipped it over. That's really invasive. It's observant, he said. There's a difference. I don't think there is. He looked at her like she'd said something interesting. The waiter came back with the drinks, a heavy tumbler of amber whiskey set in front of Adrian, a delicate glass of pale wine set in front of her. Lena looked at the wine like it was going to attack her. I can't, she said quietly. I can't pay for that. I didn't ask you to. No, she swallowed. I can't. Actually,
I have $43 in my account until Friday. I'm not being cute about it. I just want you to know because I don't want to sit here and let you buy me things and then... She stopped. She was aware very suddenly that she had just told a total stranger how much money she had. In a restaurant. In a dress she'd ironed twice. I'm sorry, she said. I don't know why I said that. Because you don't lie, Adrian said. Or you're bad at it. Which is the same thing, eventually. That's... She laughed, a short, startled sound. That's a weird thing to say to someone you just met. Is it? Yeah, it kind of is. He picked up the whiskey, didn't drink yet, just held it. What's your name? Lena. Lena what? Carter. Lena Carter. He seemed to test it. What do you do, Lena Carter? She almost lied. The lie was already in her throat. I work in finance. I'm a consultant. I'm between things. I waitress, she said, at a place called Gino's on Halstead. Lunch and dinner shifts, and I do bookkeeping for a couple of small businesses on the side. Pet groomer, a guy who runs a landscaping crew. Why were you here tonight? My friend signed me up for a dating app. The guy who didn't show, he picked the place. She shook her head, mostly at herself. I should have said no. I knew when I saw the menu I wasn't what? Wasn't the kind of woman who eats here. Adrian took a slow sip of his whiskey. His eyes didn't leave her face. What kind of woman eats here? You're joking. I'm not. Lena glanced around the room. Women with manicures, real ones. Women who don't flinch when a waiter asks if they want still or sparkling. Women who look like they were expected. And you weren't expected. No? He set the glass down. The sound was very small, very precise. Neither was I, he said. Not really. Sophia canceled because her husband came home early from a business trip in Toronto. I don't imagine either of us is going to hear from our dinner companions again. So, he gestured vaguely at the table between them. We can sit here and pretend we're strangers who nodded at each other, or we can eat. I'm going to eat either way. Lena opened her mouth, closed it. Why? She said finally. Why what? Why do you want me to stay? He was quiet for a moment. Long enough that she started to regret the question. I don't know, he said. Yet. The honesty of it rattled her more than a smooth line would have. A smooth line she could have walked away from, a smooth line she'd heard before, from men who didn't mean it, who wanted something specific and were willing to be charming for the time it took to get it. I don't know yet was different. I don't know yet meant he was figuring her out in real time, and that meant she was something worth figuring out. She wasn't used to being something worth figuring out. Lena reached for the wine glass. Her fingers weren't quite steady. She took a sip. It was crisp and cold, and she suspected more expensive than anything she'd put in her mouth in a year. Okay, she said. I'll stay, for a little while. Adrian signaled the waiter without looking. The waiter was already there. We'll start with the burrata, then the branzino for her, the bistecca for me, medium rare, and bring her another glass of the Sancerre when she's halfway through that one. Of course, Mr. Volkov. The waiter left. Lena froze for a beat. Volkov? Adrian's eyes came back to her. They were very steady. Is that a problem? I don't know. Should it be? He didn't answer that. He didn't have to. Something in the way he hadn't answered told her plenty. Lena set the wine down carefully, like it had become heavier. I'm not asking because I care, she said. Her voice was quieter now, but it had something in it that hadn't been there a minute ago. A kind of steadiness that came from her mother, whom she still drove up to see on Sundays when she could afford the gas. I'm asking because if I'm the kind of woman who should be getting up and leaving right now, I'd like to know that before I order the fish. Adrian looked at her for a long time. You're not in any danger from me, he said. That's not really an answer. No, it isn't. The burrata arrived. Lena didn't touch it. Adrian didn't either for a moment. Then he picked up a small knife and quartered it neatly and slid half the plate toward her side of the table. Eat, he said. You're hungry. You've been sitting here an hour and you haven't eaten since... He paused. Looked at her again. Lunch? Yesterday, actually, she said before she could stop herself. A granola bar. Something shifted in his face.
It was too quick to name. A small tightening, like a man who had just been handed a piece of information he intended to keep. Eat the burrata, Lena. She ate the burrata. It was, without exaggeration, the best thing she had put in her mouth in her entire adult life. Cream and salt and olive oil that tasted like it had a name. Bread still warm from an oven somewhere in the back. She didn't realize until she was halfway through that she was crying a little. Not crying, exactly. Just her eyes doing something without permission, the way bodies do when they're tired of holding things. She wiped her eye with the edge of the napkin and tried to make it look like she was adjusting her mascara. Adrian didn't say anything about it. He ate too, slower than her, and he watched her in a way that wasn't sexual, or wasn't only sexual, but attentive, like a man taking inventory. "Who are you waiting for?" she asked, because the silence was starting to feel like a held breath. "Really? You're Sophia." "Someone else is Sophia," Adrian said. "That's part of why she canceled." "Oh, I don't sleep with married women," he added calmly, like he was correcting a coat check ticket. "We had a standing lunch, business. She works for a competitor and she likes to feed me information over Branzino." "That's..." Lena didn't know what it was. "That sounds complicated." "It's very simple, actually. She's tired of her husband. I pay better than her husband does. Once a month she tells me things she shouldn't and I tell her I'll remember it." He took another sip of whiskey. "I always remember it." "That's almost worse." "Yes." The Branzino came. Adrian's steak came. The second glass of wine came. Lena was aware, in some distant way, that she was already a little drunk, that her stomach wasn't used to this much fat and this much grape, that she should probably slow down. She didn't slow down. There was something about the way Adrian Volkov was watching her, carefully and without smiling, that made her want to fill the silence with everything she was. "I have a sister," she heard herself say. "Younger. Her name's Emily. She's 23. She lives in Milwaukee. She thinks I'm doing better than I am. I let her think that. Our mom she has early onset Alzheimer's. She's in a place in Rockford. It's called Brookline. It's fine. It's not great. It's what we can pay for." She paused. "I don't usually tell people this stuff." "I know." "How do you know?" "Because if you usually told people this stuff, you wouldn't be apologizing about it." She laughed, a watery, reluctant laugh. "You're kind of a strange man, Adrian. I've been told." "By who?" "My mother," he said. "Mostly." "Is she still alive?" "Yes. In Odessa. She doesn't approve of my work." "What is your work?" Another one of those long looks. Lena had the distinct feeling she was being measured again. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was just that she'd stopped pretending to herself that she didn't notice. "Import-export," he said. "Real estate, private security contracts. I have interests in several countries." "That sounds like a long way of saying something." "It is. Are you going to tell me the short way?" "Not tonight." "Why not?" "Because tonight," Adrian said, and set his fork down, "you are a woman I met because a hostess took us to the wrong table, and I'd like to have one meal where that's what I am to somebody." Lena looked at him, really looked this time. Not at the suit or the watch, which she was sure cost more than her car, or the way the waiter had said Mr. Volkov like the word had its own gravity. She looked at his face. He had a thin scar at the edge of his left eyebrow, very faint, the kind you got from something you didn't remember the name of. There was tiredness around his eyes. He was older than she'd thought at first, late 30s, maybe 40. "Okay," she said. "Then tonight you're Adrian, the guy at the wrong table." "Thank you." "And I'm Lena, the woman who doesn't belong here." "You belong here," he said. "You just haven't been told that yet." She didn't know what to say to that. She ate the fish. She ate all of it. She didn't leave a polite half portion. She didn't pretend to be full. Somewhere in the middle of the meal, she forgot to be embarrassed, and that forgetting felt like taking off a pair of shoes that had been too small for a decade. They talked, not about anything that mattered at first. He asked her what shows she watched. She told him she didn't have a streaming service anymore, and that she was 6 seasons behind on a show she used to love. He asked what show. She told him. He told her the basic plot of the season she'd missed in under 4 sentences, without any spoilers that mattered, and she laughed out loud at how cleanly he did it. He asked what kind of music she played when she drove home from double shifts at 2 in the morning. She said gospel, actually, not because she was religious, but because her grandmother had been. And there was something about those old voices that kept her awake at the wheel without making her sad. He nodded like that made sense to him. He said he listened to a lot of Chopin in the car. She said she didn't know any Chopin. He said, "You would know the second nocturne. You'd know it the second you heard it. Play it for me sometime," she said, and then heard what she'd said. "Okay," he said. She looked down at her plate. "I'm sorry, I don't know why I said that. Stop apologizing. I'm sorry." She caught herself, smiled, a small, rueful smile. "Old habit. Break it." There was something very quiet in the way he said it. "How?" she asked. "Every time you feel one coming on, drink your wine instead." She drank her wine instead. He watched her do it, and for the first time that night, he smiled, really smiled, a narrow, crooked thing that was gone almost before it got there, but not before she saw it. The smile did something to her. Later, she'd try to describe it to Marisol and fail. It wasn't warm, exactly. It wasn't kind. It was the smile of a man who had not been amused in a long time, and who had just been, a little, without planning to. Lena Carter was 30 seconds away from deciding she was in trouble. By the time the waiter brought the dessert menu, which Adrian waved away with 2 fingers, ordering them both a tiramisu he said they would regret not eating. Lena had been sitting in that booth for almost 3 hours. Outside, the rain had stopped. Inside, Marchetti's had thinned out. A few late couples, a table of older men in dark suits who Lena noticed now because one of them had looked over at Adrian twice and then pointedly not looked again. The candle on their table was lower. The music over the speakers had shifted into something slower, something with a piano in it that might have been the nocturne he'd mentioned. Lena put her fork down. "Adrian." "What happens now?" He tilted his head. "What do you mean?" "I mean," she let out a breath. I'm not stupid. I know how this looks. A man like you, a woman like me. You buy me dinner, you buy me wine, you ask me questions, and you don't blink when I say I have $43 in my account. At some point you're going to..." She hesitated. "You're going to want something, and I'm not going home with you tonight. I'm just not. I don't care how good the wine is." He didn't react right away. When he did, it was only to set his glass down and fold his hands on the table in front of him. "I wasn't going to ask you to." "Okay?" "I was going to ask for your number." "Oh." "And I was going to pay the check, walk you to the curb, and put you in a car home." "Oh," she said again. "Is that acceptable?" It was acceptable. It was, in fact, the most acceptable thing a man had said to her in longer than she could remember. "Yes," Lena said. "Good." He lifted his hand. The waiter appeared. The check appeared, folded into a leather book so Lena couldn't see the number, which was a small mercy she was grateful for. Adrian didn't open the book. He slid a black credit card out of his inside jacket pocket and dropped it on top without breaking eye contact with her. "One more thing," he said. "Yes?" "Your mother." Lena went still. "What about her?" "Brookline." He said it carefully, like he was returning a word she'd left on the table earlier. "In Rockford." "Yes." "What's her name?" "Why?" "Because I'd like to know." Lena looked at him. Some part of her, the part her grandmother used to call the old soul, the part that noticed things, told her very clearly, very calmly, that there was more to this question than a dinner table politeness. That whatever she said next, Adrian Volkov was going to remember. She said it anyway. "Her name is Diane," she said. "Diane Carter. She was a second-grade teacher for 31 years. She can't remember my name on bad days. Her good days are the ones where she remembers I'm her daughter, but thinks I'm 8. Adrian nodded once. Just once. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For telling me." The waiter returned with the card and the receipt. Adrian signed without looking at the number. He stood first, walked around the table, and held his hand out for her. Not to take her hand, just a gesture, an offer of room to get up in a dress she wasn't used to. She took it anyway. His fingers were warm and dry. His grip was very light. She got the distinct, unsettling sense that he was being careful with her in a way that implied he didn't have to be careful with most things. Outside Marchetti's, the air was washed clean and cold. The city smelled like wet pavement and far-off exhaust. A black SUV was already at the curb. Of course it was. Lena hadn't seen him text anyone. She hadn't seen him make a call. Maybe he hadn't needed to. A man in a dark jacket stepped out of the driver's side. He was not a small man. He had the kind of neck that made his collar look apologetic. He didn't say anything. He just opened the back door. "This is Yuri," Adrian said without turning around. "He's going to take you home." "I can take an Uber." "I know." "Adrian?" He turned then, and she stopped talking. "Lena," he said. "I don't know you. You don't know me. But I'd like to call you tomorrow, and I'd like to know you got home safely tonight. Yuri is how I make sure of the second one. Your number is how you decide whether to say yes to the first." She was quiet. She gave him her number. He typed it into his phone himself. She watched his thumb move and thought stupidly that he had very precise hands. He put the phone back in his pocket, and for a second, just a second, he looked at her the way a man looks at a door he has decided to open, knowing what's on the other side and walking toward it anyway. "Good night, Lena Carter." "Good night, Adrian." She ducked into the SUV. The door closed with a soft, expensive thump. The leather smelled like cedar and something faintly metallic. Yuri pulled away from the curb without asking for an address. He already had one. She didn't ask how. She looked back once, through the rear window. Adrian Volkov was still standing on the sidewalk outside Marchetti's. He wasn't watching the car. He was watching the street. His hands were in his pockets. In the light from the awning, he looked for just a moment like a man who was remembering something he had not decided, yet, whether to do. Then the SUV turned the corner, and he was gone. No, Yuri didn't talk on the drive. Lena was grateful for it. She sat in the back with her hands in her lap, the borrowed heels kicked off on the mat at her feet, and stared out the window at a city she had lived in her entire life and suddenly didn't quite recognize. The SUV pulled up in front of her building, a tired 3-story walk-up on a block where 3 other buildings looked exactly like it, and Yuri got out and came around and opened her door before she could do it herself. "Ma'am?" "Thank you. Mr. Volkov asked me to make sure you got inside." "Oh, of course. I'm fine. I can—" "To the door, ma'am." She nodded. He walked her up the stoop. He stood at the bottom step while she unlocked the outer door, then the inner one. He waited until the inner door was fully closed behind her. Only then did she hear his footsteps go back down the stoop. Lena climbed the 3 flights to her apartment in borrowed heels, hem dragging slightly on the last flight because one of her ankles wobbled. Inside, she kicked the door shut, leaned against it, and slid all the way down to the floor. Her apartment was what it always was. Small, a little cold, a radiator that hissed like a cat, the fridge humming, a takeout menu on the counter she'd been meaning to throw away, a photo of her mother on the bookshelf from before. She sat on the floor in her navy dress, and she started to laugh. She laughed because it was absurd. She laughed because she'd eaten a $40 piece of fish with a man named Adrian Volkov, who drove a car with a driver and knew what the second nocturne was, and had asked her mother's name like he was writing it down somewhere inside his head. She laughed because her date hadn't shown up, and a stranger had, and the stranger had been whatever he had been. She laughed until she wasn't laughing. Then she sat there in the dark and thought about the way he'd said, "You belong here. You just haven't been told that yet," and the way she hadn't known what to do with it. Her phone buzzed in her purse. She fished it out with shaky fingers. An unknown number, a single line. "You got home." She stared at the screen. A second message came through. "This is Adrian," she typed back. "How did you know I was home?" "Yuri." "Oh." Then, after a long pause, another line from him, and this was the one she'd think about later, in bed, staring at the water stain on her ceiling and not sleeping. "Go to bed, Lena. I'll call you tomorrow at 6. Your medical bills under the kitchen cabinet are going to be fine. Don't look at them tonight." Her breath stopped. She hadn't told him about the medical bills. She hadn't told him about the kitchen cabinet. She sat on the floor of her small apartment, and she stared at that message. And for the first time since she had sat down at the wrong table in a restaurant she couldn't afford, Lena Carter understood all the way down in her chest, that her life had just changed. She didn't yet know whether that was a good thing. She wasn't sure it mattered. Lena didn't sleep that night. She lay on top of the covers in her navy dress for almost an hour before she found the energy to take it off, and even then she only made it as far as her bathrobe. She sat at the kitchen table in the dark with the message still open on her phone, reading it over and over like the words might rearrange themselves if she blinked hard enough. Your medical bills under the kitchen cabinet are going to be fine. She hadn't told him. She had not told him. Around 3 in the morning, she finally got up, walked across the linoleum in bare feet, and opened the cabinet under the sink. The stack of envelopes was still there, taped to the inside of the door, just the way she'd left them. Rockford Memorial. Brookline Assisted Living. A collections notice from a dental office she'd stopped going to. The tape was yellowed at the edges. Nobody had touched it. Nobody could have touched it. She sat back down at the table and felt her hands go cold. There were only 2 explanations, and neither one of them was good. Either Adrian Volkov had guessed, which was possible, because a woman who tells you she has $43 in her account and her mother is in memory care is probably a woman with medical bills somewhere, or he had not guessed at all. Either he was a man who read people the way other men read newspapers, or he was a man who had already been reading her somehow before she ever sat down at that table. Lena wasn't sure which idea scared her more. She finally fell asleep around 5, curled up on the couch with the lamp still on, and woke up 3 hours later to her phone buzzing against her sternum. She'd fallen asleep with it on her chest. Marisol. Tell me everything, Marisol said before Lena could get the phone to her ear. Oh my God, tell me everything. Was he hot? Did he pay? Did you let him kiss you? I'm dying. I'm literally standing at the bus stop dying. Tell me. He didn't show up. What? Kevin. He didn't show up. He canceled at 7:24. Lena, I'm gonna kill him. I'm gonna find his apartment and I'm gonna... Marisol. What? Someone else showed up. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Lena could hear the bus pulling up behind her friend, the hiss of the brakes, the automatic voice telling people to step back from the curb. What do you mean someone else showed up? Marisol said slowly. I mean, the hostess sat me at the wrong table, and the guy whose table it actually was, he came over and Lena rubbed her eyes. He sat down. He bought me dinner. He drove me home. He drove you home. His driver did. His driver? Marisol, I know how it sounds. No, you do not know how it sounds, because if you knew how it sounds, you would be standing outside a police station right now. Who is this guy? What's his name? Where does he work? What did he... Adrian Volkov. The silence on the other end got different. Lena, Marisol said, and her voice had dropped a full register. Lena, stop. What? Volkov. Yes. Adrian Volkov. Yes, Marisol, that's what I said. Oh, honey. What? Honey. Baby. Listen to me. My cousin Danny, you remember Danny, the one who works dispatch for the 16th District? He knows that name. That name is... Marisol stopped herself. Lena could hear her moving, stepping off the curb, away from whoever might be around her at the bus stop. That name is not a name you want. You do not want that name. Whatever he said to you, whatever he bought you, whatever he didn't do anything. Yet. Marisol. Lena, I love you. You are my best friend. Do not answer his calls. Lena looked at the phone in her hand. There was already a missed call on it from the same unknown number at 7:52 that morning. She hadn't heard it ring. I won't, she said. Promise me. I promise. Like actually promise, not fake promise. Marisol, I promise. Okay. A long breath. Okay. I'm going to call you tonight. Eat something. I love you. Throw the dress away. It's cursed. Marisol hung up. Lena sat with the phone in her hand for a long time. At 6 that evening, she was wiping down table 7 at Gino's on Halstead when her phone buzzed in her apron. She pulled it out with a cloth still in her other hand, and there it was, the same unknown number, steady as a heartbeat. She let it ring 3 times. She thought about Marisol. She thought about the tape on the inside of the cabinet door, yellowed at the edges. She thought about a man who had said you belong here, You just haven't been told that yet. In a voice that had not asked her permission to say it, she answered on the fourth ring. Hello? Lena. Hi, Soul? Are you working? Yeah, I'm on the floor right now. I only have a second. Then I'll be quick. He paused, and she could hear something in the background. Traffic, maybe, or wind, like he was outside somewhere. Dinner, Saturday night, 7 o'clock. I'll send a car. I can't. You can. You have Saturday off. You traded with a girl named Rachel 2 weeks ago because your sister was supposed to come into town and didn't, and now you have nothing to do on Saturday night. Lena went very still. Behind her, 2 of her 4 top tables were laughing at something one of the men had said. A bus hissed past the front window. Gino was yelling in Italian at the line cook about the fish. Adrian, she said quietly. How do you know that? I'll tell you Saturday. No. Tell me now. He was quiet for a moment, long enough that she almost thought the line had dropped. I don't want to scare you, Lena. Too late. Then I'll tell you this much. I had someone look into you after I left the restaurant Wednesday night. It's what I do before I get involved with anyone. I was going to tell you in person. I wasn't going to hide it. I'm telling you now because you asked, and because I'd rather you be angry with me for being honest than comfortable with me for being quiet. She felt like the floor had tilted about half an inch. You had someone look into me. Yes. Like, what? Like a private investigator? Something like that. And you know about Rachel. I know about Rachel. I know about the schedule at Gino's. I know your mother's full name and her room number at Brookline and the name of the nurse she likes best, who is a woman named Gloria Vasquez. I know you're 3 months behind on rent, and your landlord has been kind about it because his son went to the same elementary school your sister went to. I know about your bills and your debts and the cousin in Phoenix who still owes you $4,000 from a wedding she wanted you to help pay for. I know you were married once to a man named Tyler and that he left in 2022 because he said you were. And I'm using his words, too much work. Lena's hand was shaking. She had to set the cloth down on the table. That is, I know. That is so invasive. I know. That is, Lena, don't. Lena, I'm telling you because you deserve to know. I could have sat across from you Saturday night and never said a word about any of it. I'm telling you because I don't want to start that way. Start what? Whatever this is. She walked outside. She didn't remember walking outside. 1 second she was standing by table 7 with the cloth in her hand, and the next she was on the sidewalk in front of Gino's with the door swinging shut behind her and the cold air of early December slapping her in the face. I don't know what this is, she said. I don't either, yet. You keep saying that because it's true. I thought it would be over when I dropped you at your building. It wasn't. I'd like to see you again. You're the one who decides whether that happens. She closed her eyes. The wind smelled like someone frying onions 2 doors down. She could hear, faintly, a siren somewhere south of her, too far away to matter. You paid my bills, she said. Didn't you? No. Adrian, I didn't pay your bills. Not yet. I had somebody flag them so they wouldn't go to collections this month, but I didn't pay them. I wasn't going to do that without asking you. Oh, so that's the line. Yes. That's the line you don't cross. Buying the bills without permission. But running a full background check on a waitress you met at the wrong table is fine. I didn't say it was fine. Then what did you say, Adrian? Because it sounds a lot like you said it was fine. I said I'm the kind of man who does it. There's a difference. She pressed her forehead against the cold glass of Gino's front window. Gino was at the register inside, running a card through the machine for a woman in a red coat, and for a second Lena watched him through the glass like he was a stranger, like she was somebody else watching her own life from the outside. What do you want from me? She said. Dinner, Saturday, 7. I'll send a car. Wear something warm. We won't be at the restaurant long. And if I don't come, then I'll leave you alone, Lena. I meant what I said. You decide. She didn't answer right away. She looked at the reflection of herself in Gino's window. Dark hair pulled back. Gino's red apron. No makeup left because she'd been on her feet for 6 hours. And she thought, with a kind of tired honesty that surprised her, that this was probably the last chance she would ever have to walk away cleanly. Once she said yes, it wasn't going to be a date.
It hadn't been a date at Marchetti's either. She understood that now. 7 o'clock, she said. 7 o'clock. Adrian. Yes.
If you ever lie to me, I'm done. I don't care how much it costs me. I don't care what you've paid for. If you lie to my face, I'm done. I won't. Don't promise. Don't promise things. All right, he said. I won't promise. She hung up first. She'd decided before she did it that she would hang up first. She stood on the sidewalk in Gino's red apron for another full minute before she went back inside, and when she did, she dropped a plate. Gino yelled at her in Italian for 6 straight seconds. She didn't hear a word of it. Saturday night, the black SUV pulled up in front of her building at 10 minutes to 7. Lena watched from her third-floor window as Yuri got out and stood by the curb with his hands folded in front of him, not looking up, not looking at his phone, just waiting. He had the patience of a man who had spent his life waiting on other people's doors. She came down in a wool coat borrowed from Marisol. Marisol had not wanted to lend it to her. Marisol had in fact cried a little and told her she was being stupid, and then lent her the coat and a pair of black jeans and a cream sweater she had owned for 6 years and once considered her good sweater. Adrian was already in the back of the SUV. He looked up when she got in. He was in a dark overcoat, no tie, collar undone by one button, and he looked at her the way he had looked at her at Marchetti's, like she was a sentence he was reading carefully so he wouldn't miss a word of it. "Hi," she said. "Hi." She closed the door. Yuri pulled away from the curb. They rode in silence for a block. Lena watched the city move past her window, the cracked streetlights of her neighborhood giving way to the brighter, bluer lights of downtown, the river cutting through the skyline like a seam. She was aware of Adrian's hands resting on his thighs, very still, of his breathing next to her, of the fact that he had not tried to touch her, or put his arm along the back of the seat, or do any of the things men did in the first 3 minutes of being alone with a woman in a car. "Where are we going?" she said. "My mother had a saying," Adrian said instead of answering. She said, "If you're going to ask a woman a serious question, do it in the cold." "What?" She said people lie when they're warm. Lena looked at him. "Are you going to ask me a serious question, Adrian?" "Yes." The SUV pulled onto Lakeshore Drive. The lake was on their right, black and huge, rolling in against the path lights like something alive. Yuri took the exit near Belmont Harbor. He pulled into a lot that was almost empty at this hour in December, and he parked. Adrian opened his door before Lena could ask where they were going. He came around to her side and opened hers. He offered her his hand. She took it without thinking about it. They walked onto the path along the lake. There was no one else out there, just the two of them, and the wind off the water and the far low rumble of traffic behind them on the drive. Her ears started to hurt from the cold inside a minute. Adrian didn't seem to notice his own. "Here," he said. "Cold enough. This is dramatic. It's necessary." "Okay, Lena." He stopped walking. She stopped too. He turned her gently by the shoulder so that she was facing him, and he put his hands in his coat pockets and looked at her in the dim light off the lake. "I'm going to tell you who I am. I'm going to tell you because you asked. You're not going to ask questions until I'm done. And after I'm done, you can get back in the car and Yuri will take you anywhere you want to go, and you will never hear from me again, okay?" "Okay." He nodded once. "My family," he said, "came from Odessa in the late 90s. My father built a business in Chicago. The business was never legal. It was never going to be legal. He did cash loans to people the banks wouldn't touch, and he collected them the way people in that business collect them. He bought property. He owned people. When he died, the business came to me." She didn't say anything. She had promised she wouldn't. "I have made changes," Adrian said. "I am not my father. I don't lend money to addicts. I don't put women on the street. The clubs I own pay their staff legally, and I fire managers who touch the girls. The trucking company I own runs clean routes. The real estate is real. But," he paused, "but I have people, Lena. I have men who work for me who have done things I have told them to do. And some of those things are things the state of Illinois would put me in a federal prison for the rest of my life for. There is no version of this where I am the good guy in the story. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Yes, I have enemies. Most of them are far away from me. Some of them are not. Sophia Reyes, the woman who was supposed to meet me at Marchetti's. She doesn't work for a competitor. She works for a man who has spent the last 2 years trying to figure out how to put a bullet in my head. She feeds me what he wants me to know, and I feed her what I want him to think. I was there Wednesday to hand her a piece of bad information. Her husband didn't come home from Toronto. She canceled because the man she works for told her to. He knew I'd be there. I don't know yet whether he was going to try something that night. I think he probably was. Lena felt the cold in her face now, all of it at once. The reason I sat down at your table, Adrian said, is that the hostess put me there. The reason I didn't get up when I realized you were not. Sophia, is that my men were already outside in a car across the street, watching for anyone I needed to watch for, and leaving you alone at that table, with the rain coming down and you already sitting at my booth, felt... He stopped. His breath came out in a white cloud between them. It felt like something I didn't want to do. She didn't speak. I didn't plan for you, he said. I want that to be clear. I didn't set any of this up. You are not part of anything. You walked into a restaurant on a night I wasn't supposed to be there alone, and you sat down at a table I wasn't supposed to be at, and I made a decision about you inside of about 4 minutes, and I have not unmade it. That's the truth. He stopped. She waited. I had you looked into because I needed to know whether you were bait. I believed after about 2 hours that you were not, but I had it done anyway, because that's what I do. I didn't pay your bills because I don't know yet whether you'd let me, and I don't take that from people before they give it. I am telling you this in the cold because my mother was right, and because I want you to know, Lena, exactly who I am before you decide whether to get back in that car with me or alone. She didn't answer for a while. The wind came off the lake and pulled at her hair. She pushed it behind her ear with numb fingers. She looked past him, at the water, at the single light of a sailboat someone had left moored for the winter, at the far line of the city curving up and away. You said I could ask questions when you were done. Yes. Are you a murderer, Adrian? I have ordered men to die. I have not done it with my own hands. I don't know whether that makes me a murderer or not. I've stopped asking myself. Have you killed children? Innocent people? No. Women? No. Have you hurt women? No. She looked at him for a long time. That threat you mentioned, she said. The man who wants to put a bullet in you. Constantine Reyes, Sophia's husband. Yes. Does he know about me? Not yet. Will he? If you stay, yes. It won't take him long. He's thorough. And then? Adrian's jaw moved. Then, he said, I keep you safe. That is not a figure of speech, Lena. That is a job. I will move you somewhere he cannot get to you. I will put men around you. You will not be able to go back to Gino's. You will not be able to stay in that apartment. You will call your sister and tell her you took a job out of state, and you'll call your mother's facility and put them on a new billing address and a new contact card, and you will become, by degrees, a woman I can protect. If you don't want that, the car is right there. Yuri will take you home. He'll make sure Constantine never learns your name. I have ways of making sure. You can have your $43 and your double shifts and your apartment with the radiator that doesn't work on the second floor, and I will never call you again, and I will never come to Gino's. And your life will be exactly what it was on Wednesday morning before you borrowed your neighbor's heels. That's the other option. That's the other option. And if I choose it, you really won't come back. I won't. Even if you want to. I want to. I will not. She looked at him. She looked at him for a long time, until her eyes burned and she wasn't sure whether it was the cold or something else. His face was very still. He was waiting. He was a man who knew how to wait for an answer. Adrian. Yes. I don't love you. No. I don't even know you. No. And I don't know if what you just told me is everything or only the parts you think I can swallow. It's the parts I think you can swallow. I won't lie to you. You told me not to. She nodded, almost to herself. My mother, she said. She has maybe 2 good years left, maybe less. The place she's in now is... It's not good, Adrian. They have her on the wrong floor. She wanders, and they put her in a room with a woman who screams at night, and I can't get her moved because the better floor costs $11,000 a month, and I don't have $11,000 a month.
I have had to choose for 2 years between eating and driving up to Rockford to see her, and most months I pick Rockford and my sister doesn't know. Because if my sister knew she would come home from the job she finally got after 4 years of nothing, and I would rather die than let her do that. I know. Don't tell me you know. Don't tell me that. All right.
If I say yes to you, Adrian, if I say yes, you move her tomorrow, not to the nicest place money can buy, to the place with the nurses who'll sit with her when she gets scared at 4 in the morning. You pay whatever it costs. My sister never hears about you. My mother never hears about you. If you ever show up at Brookline, if you ever try to meet her, or see her, or do anything with her except pay, we are done, and I will disappear, and I will not care what it costs. Yes,
And Emily, my sister, she never knows about any of this, about you, about what you are.
yes. And if you lie to me, if you lie to me about anything, Adrian, even once, I don't care how small, I don't care if it's about what time you came home, I am gone, and I don't come back. Yes. She stood there on the path with her hands in the pockets of Marisol's borrowed coat, and she thought, very clearly, that she was about to make a decision that her mother, her real mother, the one who had taught second grade and called her Lena Bean and sang along to the car radio with all the windows down, would have begged her not to make. She made it anyway. Okay, she said. Adrian didn't move. Lena. I said okay, Adrian. Say it so I know you mean it. I'm saying yes. I'm saying yes to dinner. I'm saying yes to moving my mother. I'm saying yes to whatever the next thing is. I'm not saying yes to loving you. I'm not saying yes to sleeping with you. I'm saying yes to staying and seeing. That's enough. Is it? For now. He raised his hand slowly, the way a person raises a hand around an animal they don't want to startle. He touched the side of her face with his knuckles. Just his knuckles. Just for a second. His hand was warmer than she had expected. Then he lowered it. Come on, he said. You're freezing. I'm not. You're shaking. That's not from the cold. He nodded like he'd already known that. He walked her back to the SUV. Yuri was still at the wheel, reading something on his phone. He put it away when they approached and got out and opened her door again. Lena climbed in. Adrian climbed in on the other side. The door shut at almost the same time, and the silence inside the car was enormous. Where to, sir? Yuri said. Home, Adrian said. Lena blinked. My home, Adrian said, without turning to look at her. Not yours. I'm not taking you back to your apartment tonight. Adrian, you'll have your own room. You'll have the door. You'll have the lock. You can call Marisol from it. You can call your sister. You can call a lawyer. You can call whoever you want. But I'm not putting you back in that building tonight, Lena. I told you about Constantine 30 minutes ago. If anything happens to you between now and tomorrow morning, it'll happen because I let it, and I'm not going to let it. My things. I'll have someone pack them tomorrow. Pack them? Whatever you want moved. Whatever you want kept. Whatever you want burned. You'll make a list. Adrian, slow down. I can't slow down, Lena. Slow down is how people get hurt. She opened her mouth to argue, and then she closed it, because somewhere in the middle of the last 5 minutes, she had, apparently, agreed to this. The SUV pulled onto Lakeshore Drive, heading north. The skyline of the city unrolled against the black of the lake. Lena watched the lights go past, and she thought, absurdly, of the photograph on her bookshelf. Her mother at the beach in Michigan the summer before the diagnosis, in a straw hat and a blue swimsuit, holding up a clamshell and laughing at something Lena couldn't remember anymore. The photo was still on the shelf. She had not packed it. She had not said goodbye to it. Adrian. Yes. The photograph. On my bookshelf. The one of my mother at the beach. Yes. I want that one first. Okay. Don't let anyone else touch it. I'll come with you tomorrow and I'll get it myself. Okay. And my grandmother's rosary. It's in the top drawer of the nightstand, the little wooden box. Don't open the box. Just take the whole thing. I won't open the box. And She stopped, laughed a little, a small, cracked laugh, and wiped under her eye with the heel of her hand. I have a cardigan. It's ugly. It's gray. It's in the closet. I wear it when I'm sad. I want the cardigan. The cardigan, Adrian repeated. Yes. Okay, Lena. They drove in silence for a long time after that. The building Yuri pulled up to was on Lakeshore Drive, near the top of the Gold Coast. It was one of those buildings that Lena had walked past 100 times in her life and never actually looked at. Old limestone. A green awning, a doorman who came out the second the SUV stopped moving. A man in his 60s with a face that had seen things and decided not to mention any of them. He held the door for Adrian. He held the door for her. The lobby was quieter than any lobby she had ever been in. A marble floor, a low fire in a fireplace along one wall, a concierge at a desk who stood when they walked in. Mr. Volkov? Good evening, Frank. Is the young lady a guest, sir? Adrian didn't answer that right away. He looked at Lena. She's a resident, he said finally. As of tonight. Please have her keycard made up in the morning. Same clearance as mine. Her name is Lena Carter. She has the run of the building. Yes, sir. Lena didn't correct him. She didn't correct him, and she would think about that later, in the dark of a guest room she had not yet seen, on the top floor of a building she could not possibly afford. She would think about the fact that when Adrian Volkov had told a doorman she was a resident, she had not opened her mouth. The elevator took them up to the 42nd floor. There were only 2 doors in the hallway when they got off. Adrian put his thumb against a black square by the door on the right, and something inside the wall clicked, and the door swung open onto a hallway with a wood floor and a single lamp burning at the far end, like somebody had been waiting up for them. Inside, the penthouse was quieter than the lobby. It smelled faintly of orange peel and wood smoke, and something else underneath, something sharper, maybe metal, that Lena decided not to think about. The floors were a dark wood she didn't know the name of. The windows went from the floor to the ceiling, and beyond them the lake and the city spread out in 2 directions, more light than she had ever seen at once in her life. Adrian took his coat off. He took her coat off for her without asking. A small, practice thing, gentle, one hand at each shoulder. He hung them both on a rack by the door. Your room is down the hall on the right, he said. There's a bathroom attached. There's a closet full of things in your size. I had it done this afternoon. She turned to look at him. This afternoon? I hoped you would say yes. What if I'd said no? Then I would have given the clothes away. Adrian. Lena. She looked at him in the lamplight of his enormous, too quiet apartment, and she tried to figure out what the feeling in her chest was. And she decided it was not one feeling but 3, layered on top of each other like the rings of a tree, fear and relief, and something smaller and more dangerous than either of those. Something she had not expected to feel again in her life. The kind of feeling that makes a person say yes in the cold by a lake without thinking. Good night, Adrian. Good night, Lena. She walked down the hall without looking back. The guest room had a bed bigger than any bed she had slept in. The closet had things in it she would not look at until morning. The bathroom had a tub she didn't have the strength to fill. She sat on the edge of the bed in her jeans and her cream sweater, and she looked at her phone. There was a missed call from Marisol. There was a text from an unknown number, sent 40 minutes ago, before she had even agreed to anything. She opened it. Diane Carter, room 214, Brookline Assisted Living. Your sister's contact information has been cross-referenced. If you say yes tonight, I'll have her moved to a facility in Lake Forest by Monday afternoon. The nurse Gloria Vasquez has been offered a position there at twice her current salary. She accepted. Your mother will know at least one face. Lena read the message 3 times. She put the phone face down on the nightstand. She lay down on top of the covers in her jeans and her sweater and her socks, and she closed her eyes, and she did not sleep. Somewhere down the hall, a door shut softly. She heard the faint, distant sound of a piano. Not live, a recording, drifting through the walls of the apartment. It took her a long moment to recognize it, but when she did, she recognized it all the way down. It was Chopin, the Second Nocturne. She turned her face into the pillow in a strange man's penthouse, and she cried quietly for a while. And she wasn't entirely sure anymore what she was crying about. She woke up at 6:14 in the morning to light she didn't recognize. It came in through floor-to-ceiling windows she'd forgotten about in the 3 hours of sleep she'd managed. And it was the wrong color. Too much sky, not enough city, the kind of pale gold you only got when you were higher up than your life usually put you. For one foggy second, Lena didn't remember where she was. Then she did, and she sat up fast enough to hurt her neck. The guest room was still the guest room. The closet door was still closed. The bed was still bigger than any bed she'd ever slept in. Her phone was still face down on the nightstand where she'd left it, and when she flipped it over, there were 11 missed calls from Marisol. She texted back first. "I'm okay. I'll call you later today. Please, don't worry." 3 dots appeared immediately, then disappeared, then appeared again. "Lena Michelle Carter, you pick up this phone right now." Lena almost laughed. Almost. Instead, she turned the phone face down again, put her feet on the cold wood floor, and sat there for a long time with her hands flat on her knees, trying to remember how to be a person who had woken up somewhere. There was a soft knock on the door. She jumped. "Yes?" "Breakfast," Adrian's voice said through the wood. "In the kitchen, whenever you're ready." She listened to his footsteps move away. He walked quietly. She had noticed that last night. He walked the way a man walked when he had learned, at some point, that being heard had cost him something. Lena opened the closet. It was full of things in her size, just like he'd said. Jeans, sweaters, a half-dozen pairs of shoes lined up along the floor like they were waiting to be picked. There were 2 coats hanging up. There was a small dresser built into the wall, and when she slid the top drawer open, there was underwear in it, folded, all of it plain and soft and unremarkable. No lace, no silk, nothing that felt like it was trying to make a point. Somebody who had packed this closet had understood that she was a woman who would have thrown the lace back in his face. She put on jeans and a gray cotton sweater and a pair of house shoes that fit her like somebody had traced her foot. In the hallway, she hesitated before she walked toward the smell of coffee. The kitchen opened onto the same panoramic view she'd seen last night, but in the morning light, it wasn't beautiful in the same way. It was just big. Too big for one person. A long island with a marble top, a stove that looked like it belonged in a restaurant, a coffee machine that had more buttons than her car, and at the far end of it, Adrian, in gray sweatpants and a black long-sleeved shirt, barefoot, sliding eggs out of a pan onto a plate. He looked up when she came in. She had braced herself, on the walk down the hall, for him to look different in the morning, to look like somebody she'd agreed to too quickly. Softer or colder or just smaller, the way men sometimes got when you saw them without the suit on. He didn't look smaller. He looked like a man who had gotten up at 4. "How do you take it?" he said. "What?" "Coffee." "Oh, with cream, if you have it, a lot of cream, honestly." "I have it." He poured her a mug, added cream from a little glass pitcher already sitting out, set it on the counter at the seat across from him, and slid the plate of eggs toward her along with a piece of toast he produced from a toaster she hadn't seen. There was butter already on the toast. He'd known she'd want butter. "Sit." "Adrian?" "Sit, Lena. You didn't sleep. Eat the eggs first, we'll talk after." She sat. She picked up the fork. The eggs were soft and good, and she ate half the plate before she let herself speak. "I heard Chopin last night." "I know. You did that on purpose." "Yes. You shouldn't have." "I wasn't sure whether to. I did it anyway." "Why?" He leaned his hip against the counter on the other side of the island. He was holding his own coffee. He hadn't eaten yet. She had the feeling he was going to eat after she did, and she had the feeling that wasn't going to be the only meal he did that with. "Because you cried on the way home," he said, "and I was pretty sure you were going to cry when you got into bed, and I wanted you to have something to cry to that wasn't just the room." Lena set the fork down. Adrian, that is a strange, thoughtful, manipulative thing to do." "I know." "Don't do that again." "Play the nocturne?" Try to manage my feelings for me. I've had men do that. Small things, kind things. A flower at the right time. A text that lands just when you needed it. It feels nice until it doesn't. And I don't want to spend the next however long wondering whether you're being decent or whether you're running a play. He was quiet for a second. "That's fair," he said. "Is it?" "Yes." "Okay." He took a slow sip of his coffee. "For what it's worth," he said, "I wasn't running a play. I was trying not to check on you. The music was a compromise with myself." "A compromise?" "I wanted to knock on the door. I decided not to. That felt like a worse thing to do. The music was what I did instead." She looked at him for a long time across the marble island. She picked her fork back up. She ate the rest of the eggs. Fine, she said.
Fine? Fine. The music is fine. I liked it, actually. I don't want to like a lot of the things I'm about to like in this apartment, Adrian, but I like the music. He didn't smile. His mouth did the thing it had done at Marchetti's that wasn't quite a smile. Okay, he said.
After breakfast, he went into the back bedroom, and she heard him on the phone in a low voice for almost 40 minutes. She sat on the couch in the big living room in her borrowed jeans, and she looked out at the lake, and she tried not to eavesdrop. Every so often, she caught a word. Lake Forest once, Vasquez twice, numbers, a Russian word she didn't know and didn't ask about. When he came back out, he was in a charcoal suit again. The suit did something to him that the sweatpants hadn't. It reset him. It put the man from Marchetti's back on top of the man who had made her eggs. Your mother moves at 1 o'clock this afternoon, he said. Today? I told you Monday. I moved it up. Adrian, the wing at Brookline she's on isn't safe for her. Not for the reasons I told you last night, for the reasons you already know. The night floor nurse ratio is wrong. A woman wanders out of her room 3 doors down from your mother's every other night. I don't want that to be the morning somebody realizes they don't know where your mother got to. He paused. I want her out of there before tonight. Lena's chest went hot and cold at the same time. How do you know about the wandering? The report I had done covered the staff schedule and the incident log. That's Adrian. That's private medical information. Yes, that is not okay. No, it isn't. You keep saying that. You keep admitting it, and admitting it doesn't make it okay. I know. Then why do you keep doing it? Because if I don't do it, something happens to somebody I could have kept from it happening to. She closed her eyes. Adrian. Yes.
I don't know how to live with you. You don't have to learn all of it today. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I don't know how to live with a man who breaks every rule I believe in and is right about it half the time. That's not something I know how to do. I know. Put your coat on. We'll go get the photograph. They went back to her apartment in the black SUV with Yuri at the wheel, and a second car, a dark sedan, following them at a careful distance. Lena noticed the second car at the first stoplight. Adrian noticed her noticing it and didn't say anything. Who's in the other car? She said. A man named Max and a man named Tolya. You'll meet them eventually. Are they always there? From today forward, yes. Around you, yes. You won't usually see them. They'll usually see you. Forever, until Constantine isn't a problem anymore. And when will that be? Adrian looked out the window. I don't know, Lena. Her apartment felt smaller than she remembered. The radiator was still hissing. The photograph of her mother was still on the bookshelf, in the same cheap silver frame she had bought at a drugstore in Rockford 6 years ago. Lena took the frame down herself. She wrapped it in a dish towel from the kitchen. She put it in a grocery bag. She opened the top drawer of her nightstand. The little wooden box with her grandmother's rosary in it was where she'd left it. She put that in the bag too. She opened her closet. The gray cardigan was on a hanger at the back. She held it against her face for a second, without planning to. It smelled like her soap, like her apartment, like the part of her life she was about to leave behind in a grocery bag with a photograph and a wooden box and a piece of knitting she'd owned since college. She put the cardigan in the bag. Adrian had stayed in the living room. She could hear him, very faintly, talking to someone on the phone. When she came out with the bag in her hand, he ended the call. That's it? That's it. The rest of it. I don't want the rest of it, Adrian. I want these 3 things. Send somebody else for my clothes, or don't. The clothes aren't... I don't want to take my whole life with me. I want to take what matters. He looked at her for a second, and then he nodded, once. All right. On the drive out of her neighborhood, she made him stop twice. The first time was at Gino's. She went in alone. She told Gino, standing at the register in his apron with the red sauce on the sleeve, that she had to move for family, that her mother had taken a bad turn, that she was sorry about the plate she'd dropped on Thursday. Gino kissed her on both cheeks and called her a good girl and gave her an envelope with $400 in cash in it from the tip jar. She cried on the sidewalk for 10 seconds, collected herself, got back in the car. The second stop was at Marisol's building. Marisol did not let her into the apartment.
Marisol came downstairs in a bathrobe and slippers and stood with her on the sidewalk in the gray late morning light and looked at the SUV and the second car and said quietly, "Lena, what are you doing?" "I'm okay." "You are not okay. You are standing in front of a car with tinted windows telling me you are okay. I have seen movies, Lena. I know what this is." "Marisol, don't Marisol me. Marisol, listen to me." Lena took her friend's hand. Marisol's hand was very small and very warm. "My mother is getting moved today. A good place, not Brookline. A place with real nurses and real care, and Gloria is going to be there. Emily never has to find out. I'm not going to have to work 2 jobs. I'm not going to be 3 months behind anymore. I'm going to be okay." "At what cost?" "I don't know yet." "Lena, I don't know yet, Marisol. I know what you think. I know what Danny said. I'm going to be careful. I'm going to call you every day. If I stop calling you every day, you call Danny and you tell him where I went and who took me, okay?" Marisol's eyes filled. "I'm not doing that." "Yes, you are." "I'm not going to call a cop about my best friend's gangster boyfriend." "He's not my boyfriend." "Oh, for Marisol." "What?" "Please." Marisol hugged her so hard her ribs hurt. Marisol cried into her hair and said the word stupid 4 times, and then pulled back and wiped her own face with the sleeve of her bathrobe and said, "Bring me your dry cleaning next week and I'll believe you're alive." "Okay." "Okay." Lena got back in the car. She did not look back at Marisol this time. She couldn't. At the Lake Forest facility that afternoon, a woman in a soft blue blouse met them at the door. Her name was Mrs. Patel. She was maybe 60, gray-streaked hair, the kind of calm in her face that came from doing the hardest work there was and doing it for 30 years. She shook Adrian's hand once, politely, like she knew exactly who he was and had made her peace with the check. She took Lena's hand in both of hers. "Your mother arrived 40 minutes ago, Miss Carter. She's in her new room. She's a little disoriented from the ride. Gloria is with her." "Gloria is really here." "She started this morning, sweetheart." Lena's eyes burned. Mrs. Patel walked her down a long hall with windows on one side that looked out at a small winter garden. Adrian stayed in the lobby. He did not come down the hall. He had promised her, last night by the lake, that he would not meet her mother, and he was a man who was going to keep that specific promise. The room was small but bright. There was a window. There was a small shelf where the photograph she had in the grocery bag would fit. There was a quilt on the bed that Lena did not recognize. Her mother was in the armchair by the window. Her mother, in the gray sweater Lena had bought her 3 Christmases ago, with her hair brushed and her feet in the slippers she liked. Her mother, smaller than Lena remembered, the way she was smaller every time Lena saw her now. Her mother's eyes, which on bad days looked like water. Today they looked like water. "Mama." "Oh." "It's me, Mama. It's Lena Bean." "Oh, baby." "Hi, Mama." Her mother reached a hand up. Lena took it and knelt down next to the armchair and put her forehead against her mother's knuckles. Her mother's hand was cold. Her mother's other hand came up and landed on the crown of Lena's head and stayed there. "Did you have breakfast?" her mother said. "I did, Mama. I had eggs." "Good. That's good. You don't eat enough." "I know, Mama." "My little bird, you don't eat enough." Lena stayed like that for a long time. Gloria, who had been sitting on the edge of the bed, quietly got up and stepped out of the room and closed the door softly behind her. When Lena finally lifted her head, her mother was looking at her the way her mother looked on the days she remembered, just a little, just for a minute. Her eyes, not the water eyes, but the old ones, sharp and kind at the same time. The eyes that used to catch Lena lying about her homework in the 3rd grade. "Baby," her mother said. "Yes, Mama." "Where'd the money come from?" Lena froze. "What money, Mama?" "This place." Her mother's eyes drifted a little. "This place is nice. The other one wasn't nice. Where'd the money come from, baby?" Lena did not lie. She had told Adrian she would not be lied to, and she could not, would not start with the woman in the chair. "From a man, Mama." "A good man?" "I don't know yet." Her mother looked at her for a long moment. "You be careful," her mother said. "You be careful with your whole self, not just the parts he can see." "Yes, Mama." "Not just the parts he can see, Lena Bean. He don't get all of you, you hear me?"
Yes, Mama. I hear you. Good. Her mother closed her eyes. She was asleep almost immediately, the way she fell asleep now, without warning, in the middle of a sentence. Lena stayed on the floor by the chair with her mother's hand still in hers until her knees started to hurt. She left the room and walked down the hall and was halfway to the lobby before she realized she was crying. Adrian stood when he saw her. He didn't come toward her. He stood exactly where he was and waited for her to decide what direction to cross the lobby in. She crossed it into him. She put her face against the wool of his overcoat, and she stood there and she cried for maybe 90 seconds. He didn't put his arms around her. He put one hand very carefully on the back of her head, and he left it there. The other stayed at his side. Okay, he said, after. Okay, Lena. Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank you. Okay. In the car going back to the city, she was quiet for a long time. Adrian didn't push her. He looked out his window. Yuri drove. The second car was somewhere behind them, as it was going to be for a long time now. Adrian? Yes. I want to know what I'm living in. All right. Not all of it. I don't want to know all of it, but I want to know enough that I'm not a woman in a tower who doesn't understand what's happening under her. I don't want to be that. I can't be that. Okay? Tell me the next thing I need to know. He thought for a moment. He was very still when he thought. He did not fidget. He did not touch his face. Tuesday, he said, I have a meeting. It's at a restaurant on Taylor Street in Little Italy. It's a place that has been used by men like me for meetings of that kind for about 40 years. Nobody shoots anybody on Taylor Street. There are rules. I am meeting two men to discuss a piece of property on the south side that we both want. One of them works for Constantine. He doesn't know I know that. I'm going to pretend I don't. I'll come home afterward. You'll be here. Most of the days, Lena, it's going to look like that. Breakfast, a meeting, dinner, a phone call. Most of this is not movies, and the part that is rare and is managed. Managed how? With men, Lena. With men, and with money, and with decisions that are made early enough that things don't get to the part that's movies. And if you're wrong about the early part, then I have Yuri, and I have Max, and I have Tolia, and I have a building with 3 doormen who are not what they appear to be, and I have a keycard system on my elevator that only lets 4 people up, and one of them is you as of this morning. That's the part that's managed. She looked out her window. Are you lying to me? She said. No. Say it to my face. He turned. He looked at her. I'm not lying to you, Lena. I told you I wouldn't. I won't. Okay. She believed him. She didn't know whether that was because he was telling the truth or because she wanted so badly for it to be true that she had decided in advance to believe him. She was going to have to be careful about that distinction. She was going to have to be very careful. That night she slept in the guest room again, with the door locked. She woke up at 3:40 in the morning to the sound of voices in the apartment, and she lay very still in the dark and listened. Adrian's voice, another man's voice, lower, not a language she knew. The other man sounded tired. Adrian sounded the way he had sounded in the SUV on the way home from Marchetti's that first night, calm and exact. The conversation went on for maybe 15 minutes. Then the other man left. She heard the door close. She heard Adrian move through the apartment, heard him stop for a moment outside her door. He didn't knock. He walked away. She did not sleep again until almost 5. In the morning, at breakfast, neither of them mentioned it. Adrian made eggs again. He poured her coffee with cream. He asked her if she wanted toast. He was clean-shaven, and he smelled faintly of aftershave and whatever cologne he wore. And he had slept, she was pretty sure, less than she had. Who was here last night? She said finally, halfway through the eggs. A man named Pavel. He's been with me for 11 years. What did he want? He wanted to tell me that Constantine had a man watching your apartment on Thursday night, 2 hours before you got home from Marchetti's. He was parked across the street in a blue car. He did not come up. He drove away at 1:47 in the morning. Lena put her fork down. Why? Because Sophia told Constantine where I was that night. Constantine didn't know until Thursday afternoon that I had stayed past the appointment. Somebody told him I'd sat with a woman he didn't know. He wanted to know who she was. He sent someone to find out. And that someone
Didn't find out because Yuri had already taken you home and swept you through the back entrance of your building, and because I had two of my own men on your block for the rest of the night, and because I spent most of Thursday morning making phone calls and moving some people around. Phone calls like what? Phone calls that told certain people that the woman at my table Wednesday night was a mistake, was an acquaintance, was not important. And Constantine didn't believe me entirely, but believed me enough. He didn't send the man back. He is, for now, curious and not certain. For now. Lena pushed her plate away. Adrian. Yes. This is what the rest of my life is. For a while. For how long a while? I don't know. I don't lie to you. I don't know. She got up from the counter. She walked to the window. She stood there with her arms folded across her chest, and she looked at the lake, and she thought about the blue car that had been parked across from her building for 2.5 hours on Thursday, while she had been lying on her bathrobe at her kitchen table reading a text message about her medical bills. A stranger had sat in a car on her street for 2.5 hours because of her. A stranger had driven away because Adrian had made phone calls. She stood at the window for a long time. I want to see my sister, she said finally. Okay. Not yet. In a month, maybe, when whatever you're managing is more managed. I want to drive to Milwaukee and have lunch with her. I want to look her in the face. I want to make sure I can still do that. Okay. And Adrian. Yes. If this, she didn't turn around. If this thing, this whatever, if it ever tips into the part that's movies, if it tips, I want you to tell me the second you know, not after, the second. Before the men come, not while they're coming. Yes, I mean it. I know you do. Yes. Okay. She kept looking at the lake. Behind her, she heard him stand up. She heard him clear both plates off the counter. She heard water running in the sink. She heard the small domestic sound of a man rinsing forks in an apartment the size of a small hotel. It was absurd, and it was ordinary, and it was her life now. The next 2 weeks fell into a rhythm she would not have believed was possible if somebody had described it to her a month earlier. She woke up in the guest room. She ate breakfast at the island. Adrian left for the office he kept in a tower downtown around 8:30, kissed her once, very lightly, on the temple before he left, a thing he had started doing on day 3 without asking, and she had not stopped him from doing. And she spent her days in the penthouse the way a person marooned on a luxurious island spends them. She read books from his shelves. The shelves were full of books he had actually read. There were notes in the margins, and creased spines, and a thin film of dust only on the top shelf, where he had put the books he didn't love. She read Dostoevsky and Joan Didion, and a thriller about a hitman in Rome that she finished in one afternoon. She called Marisol every day. Marisol had stopped crying. Marisol had moved on to a kind of grim, checked-in concern that Lena preferred to the tears. She drove to Lake Forest twice a week in a black car Yuri assigned her, with Max in the driver's seat, a quiet, square-shouldered man in his 40s who listened to sports radio on low and did not try to make conversation. Her mother's good days came more often at the new place. The food was softer, the nurses were present, and she and Adrian began, in small and dangerous ways, to be something. It happened in the kitchen, mostly. It happened when he came home at 9 or 10 or once on a Thursday at almost midnight with a cut on the back of his hand that he didn't explain, and they stood at the island drinking tea that she had made because she had discovered that he drank tea when he was tired and coffee when he was not. It happened when she made him laugh. Actually, laugh. Not the almost smile, a real one with a sound. The night she told him, accurately, that the shoes in the guest room closet were half a size too big. It happened when he asked her on a Sunday morning if she would come with him to look at a building he was thinking about buying in Bucktown, and she said yes, and they walked through it together in their coats, and she told him honestly that the layout was ugly, and he stood in the middle of an empty warehouse and looked at her and said quietly, "Thank you, Lena. Nobody tells me a building is ugly anymore." It happened in the small things, and she did not see all of it happening, which was maybe the most dangerous part. And then, on a Tuesday night 3 weeks after she had moved into the penthouse, Adrian came home at 7 and stood in the doorway of the kitchen with his coat still on and said, "Lena, sit down." She sat down. She already knew. "Constantine knows your name," Adrian said. She sat down because her knees had already decided for her. The kitchen had the kind of quiet that a kitchen gets when somebody has just said something that cannot be taken back. The refrigerator hummed. A pot of water she had been about to start for pasta was sitting on the cold stove, unlit. Her hands were still damp from rinsing it. "How?" she said. Adrian took his coat off. He did it slowly, one shoulder at a time, and hung it on the back of the stool across from her before he sat down. He set a manila folder on the counter between them. He didn't open it. "A girl at Gino's," he said. "A waitress named Danielle. You worked Sunday lunches with her." "Danielle? She's 23. She has a boyfriend who gambles at a club on Cermak. The club is owned by a man who runs errands for Constantine. The boyfriend owes the club $14,000. About a week ago, the manager at the club told him he could make the 14 stretch if Danielle could tell him about the waitress who'd quit in December. The one whose mother was sick. The one who suddenly had money. Oh, God. He gave them your name, Lena. He gave them your mother's full name. He didn't know where you'd gone. He didn't know about Brookline or about Lake Forest. He didn't know any of that. He gave them what he had." "When?" "Yesterday." "How do you know?" "I have a man at the club. He called me this morning. I spent the day verifying before I told you." "Danielle." Lena pressed the heel of her hand against her mouth. "Danielle didn't know. Adrian, Danielle would not have... She didn't know what she was giving them. I know. I'm not doing anything to her. I want you to hear me on that. I am not doing anything to a 23-year-old waitress whose boyfriend is a gambling addict. That is not what this is." "Okay." "She's going to be fine. Her boyfriend is going to be less fine. That's the situation. I wanted to tell you before you heard anything else." Lena nodded. She didn't trust her voice for a second. The water in the pot on the stove was, in her peripheral vision, completely still. "My mother," she said, "is safe. Lake Forest has a private security desk at the front. They have always had it. Starting tomorrow, that desk has 2 of my men at it, in the uniform of the facility, paid through a contract Mrs. Patel doesn't know is mine. Your mother will never see them. She will never know they are there. They will be there. And Emily, your sister is in Milwaukee. I put a car on her block tonight, 2 hours ago. Not mine. A firm I use for things like this. They'll be there until this is over. She will not see them either. I have not contacted her. I have not scared her. I will not, unless I have to." "Marisol." "Same. A car on her building. I already spoke to Marisol an hour ago, Lena. I drove over and I sat in her kitchen and I told her what was happening. She asked for time to yell at me. I let her. When she was done, she asked what she could do. I told her. She agreed." Lena lifted her face out of her hand. "You spoke to Marisol?" "Yes." "Without me?" "Yes." "You were at Lake Forest this afternoon. I needed her in on it before you got home." "Adrian, I know. You keep saying that. I know." He reached across the counter, slow, the way he did everything around her now. He put his hand, palm up, on the marble between them. He didn't ask for hers. He just left it there. After a moment, she set her hand in his. His fingers closed around it. "Lena." "Yes? I can get you out of this." "What does that mean?" "It means I have a place in Colorado. A house. It's on a private road above a town called Ridgeway. It is as far from Chicago as a person can be without crossing a border. It has a 3-person staff that I trust. It has a local sheriff who will take a phone call from me if there is a problem. You can be on a plane tonight. You can take Marisol with you. You can take your sister. You can take your mother once she's stable enough for the altitude. You can sit in that house and read books for 6 months and come home when this is done. I will pay for all of it. You will not hear from me again until it is safe. That is an option." She looked at him. She looked at his hand around hers and the line of his jaw in the kitchen light, and she looked at the folder on the counter she had not opened, and she thought about her mother's small, cold hand on her hair that first afternoon at Lake Forest, about the quilt on the bed, about Gloria's face when she had come out of the room. "No," she said. "Lena." "No, Adrian. I'm not going to Colorado. Listen to me." "I'm listening." "If you stay, this changes. This is not the penthouse and breakfast. This is men on every floor of this building. This is you not leaving the apartment without Max in the hall. This is Yuri sleeping in the guest room for however long it takes. This is me not being at this kitchen counter every night because I'm going to be out finishing this, and you are going to be here without me, sometimes for 2 days at a time. This is phone calls at 4 in the morning. This is my face in a way you haven't seen it yet.
Yes. Yes, what? Yes, I know. You don't know. You haven't seen. Then I'll see, Adrian. I'll see. But I'm not going to Colorado. I'm not going to sit in a house on a private road and read books while a man I have slowly started to... She stopped herself. She started again. While you do whatever you're going to do and come home in pieces. I'm not doing it. I said I would stay. I meant stay. You don't owe me that. I know I don't. I'm not doing it for you.
Then who are you doing it for?
For me, Adrian. For me. Because if I run now, I will spend the rest of my life being the kind of woman who ran, and I have been that woman, and she is tired, and I am not being her again. He looked at her for a long time. Okay, he said. Okay, Lena. He didn't let go of her hand. That was the Tuesday.
By Thursday, everything Adrian had described had arrived, in exactly the order he had described it. A man named Tolya, a short, broad-shouldered man in his late 30s with a quiet face and eyes that moved around a room the way a camera moves, had moved into the guest room with a duffel bag. Yuri was downstairs in the lobby most hours, sitting in a leather chair by the fireplace with a book he was not actually reading. Max was on the parking level whenever the SUV was there. A third man, older, gray at the temples, named Pavel, the one who had come at 3 in the morning her first week, was spending his nights in the apartment that shared the 42nd floor with Adrian's, which Adrian, it turned out, also owned. Lena had not been told it was his apartment too. She had assumed a neighbor lived there. She understood now that the entire floor had been his for years. He had simply not wanted to tell her that the night he brought her home. She didn't bring it up. She was learning which questions were worth asking and which ones had answers she already knew. Adrian did not come home on Wednesday night. He called her at 11. He said, "I'm with Pavel. I'm in a meeting. I'm safe. Go to bed." She did not go to bed. She sat in the living room in her gray cardigan with a book open in her lap, and she did not read a word of it until she heard the front door at 2:40 in the morning. He came into the living room. He had not taken his coat off. He had a smear of something dark on his right cuff. He saw her on the couch, and he stopped in the doorway. "I told you to go to bed." "I didn't." "Lena." "I didn't, Adrian. What is on your sleeve?" He looked down at his own cuff. His face did not move. "Not mine," he said. "Whose?" "You don't want to know." "I do." "You don't." They looked at each other across the living room. "A man named Bogdan," Adrian said finally. "He worked for Konstantin for 6 years. He was the one who gave the waitress's boyfriend the money for your name. He's alive. He's in a place. He's going to stay there for a while. The blood is from his nose, that's all. I didn't kill him, Lena. I had a conversation with him. I had it in a way he remembered." "Okay." "Okay?" "Okay, I hear you." He came into the room. He sat down on the other end of the couch, not close to her, not far. He took the coat off then. He folded it carefully. He was a careful man, in small ways, even now, and laid it across the arm of the couch. "You should not have waited up." "I know." "Why did you?" "Because I wanted to see you come through the door." He looked at the floor between them. "Lena." "Yes." "I'm going to be gone tomorrow night too, and probably the one after that." "Okay." "If anything happens, Tolya will tell you what to do. You listen to him." "Okay." "I'll call you when I can." "Okay." He leaned his head back against the couch and closed his eyes. There was a small line at the corner of his mouth that had not been there a month ago. She reached over, without thinking about it, and she put her hand over the line on his cuff where the blood was. Not to clean it, just to cover it. He opened his eyes when she did. He didn't say anything. He watched her hand. "Go to bed, Adrian." "Yes," he said. Friday was the day everything went wrong. Lena was at Lake Forest in the early afternoon. Max was at the wheel on the way up, and the second car, a different one that week, a gray sedan with 2 men in it she didn't know by name yet, was 40 yards behind them in the thin December light. Her mother was having a middle kind of day. Not great, not bad.
The kind where she knew Lena was somebody familiar, but did not quite commit to which somebody. They sat by the window and Lena read to her out of a magazine for 40 minutes. At 3:10, Max knocked on the door. Lena had been told by Adrian that Max was not allowed to knock on the door at Lake Forest except under one circumstance. She put the magazine down. "Mama, I'll be right back." Her mother didn't look up. In the hall, Max was not looking at her. He was looking past her, down the corridor toward the lobby, and his hand was not on his phone. It was inside his jacket. "Ma'am," he said, "we leave now." "What happened?" "Car." "What car?" "Car, we know. 3 blocks back. It is not a car that should be on this road." "Max?" "Now, ma'am, please." Lena went back into her mother's room. She kissed her mother on the forehead. Her mother's eyes drifted up to her face and did not quite focus. "I'll come back, Mama." "You be careful," her mother said without inflection, without knowing what she was saying. "Not just the parts he can see." "Yes, Mama." She walked down the hall with Max between her and the window. Mrs. Patel was at the nurse's station, and Max, without stopping, said something low to her, a handful of words. Mrs. Patel nodded. Her face did not change. She picked up a phone. The sedan was at the side door instead of the front. Lena didn't remember that being the arrangement. She got in without asking. Max shut the door behind her and got in the front. The driver, not the man she was used to, was already pulling away before her door had fully closed. Her phone rang. "Adrian." "Are you in the car?" "Yes." "Good. Listen to me. You're going to a house in Evanston, not the apartment. Max knows where. There's a woman at the house named Irina. She'll be there when you get in. You'll be there for 2 days, maybe 3. Marisol is on her way. Your sister is fine. Your mother is fine. The building at Lake Forest went into a quiet lockdown 30 seconds after Max got you out the door. Nobody there will panic. Nobody will know why. Tell me you hear me." "I hear you." "Lena." "Yes. I love you." The car was going fast now, merging onto the interstate, Max's hand still inside his jacket, and Lena sat in the back of a gray sedan on a Friday afternoon 3 weeks before Christmas and heard a man say that to her for the first time in almost 4 years, and she did not know what to say back. "Adrian, you don't have to answer that. I don't need you to. I just needed to say it out loud before tonight in case I don't get to say it after." "Adrian, I'll call you when I can." He hung up. Lena sat in the back seat with the phone still at her ear and looked out the window at the blur of gray highway and gray sky and frozen grass along the shoulder. And she understood, somewhere in the middle of her chest, that the part Adrian had called the part that's movies had begun. The house in Evanston was a 2-story Victorian on a street full of 2-story Victorians, the kind of house that would not attract a second glance from anybody who drove past it. Max walked her up the porch. The door was opened by a woman in her 50s with short gray hair and reading glasses pushed up on her head and an apron tied around her waist over jeans and a sweater. She looked like a librarian. She was not a librarian. "Lena," the woman said. "Irina, come in. It is cold." Marisol was in the living room. Marisol stood up when Lena came in. Marisol did not say anything. Marisol just walked across the room and hugged her, the way she had hugged her on the sidewalk outside her building, and held on for a long time. "Don't," Lena said into her friend's hair. "Don't start." "I'm not starting." "Yes, you are." "A little." "I'm starting a little." Marisol. Okay, baby. Come sit down." They sat on the couch. Irina brought them tea. Max took up a position by the front window where he could see the street without being seen from it. Somewhere else in the house, another man was walking around. Lena could hear the floor creak above her. She did not ask. She was becoming, by degrees, a woman who did not ask. The first night in the house in Evanston was the longest night of Lena Carter's life up to that point. She sat up in a small bedroom at the back of the house with a lamp on the nightstand and her phone in her lap. And at 1:10 in the morning, she heard sirens, far away, south of them somewhere. Too far away to mean anything, and she heard them again 20 minutes later closer, and then one more time at 2:45 and much closer, on a street nearby close enough to move the air. She did not sleep. At 6:12 in the morning, her phone buzzed. Alive. Coming to you. 2 hours. She read it 3 times before she let herself believe it. She went downstairs in the gray cardigan, barefoot on the old wood floor,
and Irina was already up making coffee in a kitchen that smelled like bacon and yeast bread, and Max was asleep in an armchair with his gun still in his shoulder holster, and Marisol was at the kitchen table in Irina's bathrobe, and all of them looked up when she came in. "He's alive," Lena said. Marisol made a small sound. Irina crossed herself without thinking. Max, in the armchair, did not open his eyes, but said softly, "Good," like somebody had told him it had finally stopped raining. Adrian arrived at 8:40. He came through the front door with Pavel behind him, and a man she didn't know behind Pavel, and he had a bandage along the side of his jaw, and his right hand was wrapped in gauze. His suit was gone. He was wearing what looked like somebody else's clothes. A dark gray sweatshirt that didn't fit him right, jeans, boots that had been recently cleaned. He stopped in the doorway of the living room when he saw her. "Lena." "Adrian." She crossed the room without planning to. She did not run. She walked fast. She put both her hands very gently on either side of his face, missing the bandage, and she looked at him for a long second, and then she pressed her forehead against his forehead, and she stood there with her eyes closed, and she did not cry. "I'm okay," he said. "Lena, I'm okay." "Who else?" "Pavel's all right. Tolya's all right. We lost..." His voice dropped. "We lost two of mine. Yuri's brother, Vasya. A man you didn't know yet, Artem. Konstantin is..." He looked past her, at Marisol on the couch, and back at Lena. "I'll tell you the rest in private." She nodded. "Your hand?" "A piece of glass. It's fine." "Your face?" "Also glass. A window went out next to me. I was lucky." "Yes?" she said. "Yes, you were." He put his arms around her carefully. He did it carefully because of the hand. And he held her in the doorway of a stranger's house in Evanston, while Irina in the kitchen made herself very busy with the eggs. They went upstairs to talk. The small bedroom where she had not slept had a little chair in the corner and a window that looked out at a bare maple and the roof of the garage next door. Adrian sat in the chair. She sat on the edge of the bed. He was, she saw now, not as calm as he had been in the doorway. Some of the calm in the doorway had been for the benefit of the other people in the room. Up here, with just her, he sat with his elbows on his knees and his head low, and he did not look at her for almost a full minute. "Adrian?" "Yes." "Tell me." He did. He told her that Konstantin had tried to hit 3 places at once: a restaurant on the near west side where Adrian had taken a meeting on Wednesday, a parking structure near Adrian's office, and at almost exactly the same time, a truck depot on the south side that belonged to Adrian's trucking company. He told her Konstantin's men had gone to the wrong meeting because the information they had been given about Adrian's schedule that night had been carefully wrong. He told her that 2 of Adrian's men had died in the parking structure. In a moment, Adrian did not describe in detail, and that Adrian himself had been in a car 4 blocks away when it happened because Pavel had insisted on a different route at the last moment. He told her that after that there had been a decision to make. "I made the decision, Lena." "What decision?" "Konstantin is dead." She looked at him. "Since when?" "Since about 4 this morning." "Adrian, I did not do it with my hand. That is, I am telling you that to be specific, not to excuse it. I gave the order. Somebody I trust carried it out. It happened at his house. His wife was not there. She was in a hotel downtown, where I had put her 2 days ago with a plausible reason that did not involve him. She does not know yet. She will know in about 3 hours when she is called by the police." "Sophia." "Yes." "Is Sophia..." "She's alive. She's alive, and she is, as of 20 minutes ago, on a plane to her sister in Madrid with $300,000 in a carry-on bag. She is not going to come back. She will not be a problem for anyone, Lena. That is the part I could do cleanly." "You planned this?" "Yes." "For how long?" "Since Thursday, maybe since Wednesday. I had planned several things. I chose the one we could finish." Lena sat with her hands flat on the bedspread on either side of her thighs. "And the men he had," she said, "the ones under him. They're negotiating, Lena. That is what they do. Half of them wanted him dead already. The other half want to be alive next week. I spent most of the last 12 hours on the phone. It is done. It is ugly, and it is done, and it is not going to come back at you. At us." "You said at us." "I did." "Adrian?" "Yes." She looked at him. She looked at the bandage at his jaw, and the gauze on his hand and the lines at the corners of his eyes that had not been there a month ago. And she thought about the cuff with blood on it 2 nights ago, about the cold on the path by the lake the night he had told her who he was, about her mother's hand on her hair, saying not just the parts he can see, about a child Lena herself had once been, in a green park in Rockford with her mother and her sister and her own small shadow on the grass. She had told him, in the kitchen on Tuesday, that she was not running. She had meant it. She had told him she did not love him on a path by the lake in December. That, it turned out, was no longer true. "Come here," she said. "Lena. Come here, Adrian, please." He got up out of the chair. He sat down on the bed next to her. He did not touch her with the hurt hand. He put the other hand, the whole one, under her jaw, and he turned her face up to his. "I'm not going anywhere," she said. "Lena, I'm not. I thought about it yesterday in the car. I thought about it last night. I am not going to Colorado. I am not going to Milwaukee. I am not going anywhere. I am going back to the apartment with you tomorrow. I am going to be there on Christmas. I am going to be there next year. Do you hear me?" "I hear you. I don't want any more dead men I don't know the names of. I don't want Vasya's brother to lose him for nothing. If you're changing this thing you built, if you are pulling back, if you are making it smaller and cleaner the way you told me you have been trying to, then you finish it. You finish pulling back, not for me, for you. Because the man I have started to care about, Adrian, is the one who fries eggs in the morning, not the one on the phone at 4. I love that one also, but I want the first one more. Lena, promise me you will keep pulling back. I promised you I wouldn't promise you things. I'm releasing you from that promise, just for this. Promise me. This one thing." He looked at her for a long time. He was a man who did not waste words. She had learned that about him. When he finally spoke, he spoke very quietly, like somebody putting something down between the two of them that could not be picked back up. "I promise," he said. She kissed him then, on the mouth, for the first time since they had met. It was not a dramatic kiss. It was not the kiss of a woman who had decided. It was the kiss of a woman who had already decided and was simply telling him in the plainest way she had. His good hand tightened at her jaw. He kissed her back carefully. His mouth tasted faintly of iron. When they pulled apart, he put his forehead against hers, the way she had put hers against his in the doorway, and they sat on the edge of the bed in Irina's small guest room with the morning light coming through the window in bars. "Adrian." "Yes." "I want to go home." "Okay." "The apartment, not Colorado. Home." "Okay, Lena." They went back that afternoon. Marisol rode with them part of the way, and Yuri met them at a rest stop to switch cars and to put an arm around Lena without saying anything, which for Yuri was a speech. At the penthouse, Adrian did not let Lena help with his hand. He let Irina, who had come with them, clean and re-wrap it at the kitchen island while Lena made soup on the stove with ingredients that had been left in the refrigerator by a woman she had never met. That night, for the first time, Lena did not sleep in the guest room. She took her pillow and her grandmother's rosary in its wooden box and her mother's photograph in the cheap silver frame, and she walked them down the hall to Adrian's bedroom, and she put the photograph on the shelf next to his bed and the box on the nightstand and the pillow on the left side of the mattress. When he came out of the bathroom in sweatpants and the bandage at his jaw, he stopped in the doorway when he saw her there. "Lena, don't make me explain it, Adrian. I'm not." He came to the bed and he lay down on his side of it, the right side, the side he had always slept on, she would learn later, since he was 19 years old, and she turned off the lamp, and in the dark she found his hand under the covers, the whole hand, not the wrapped one, and she held on to it. She did not sleep right away. But when she finally did, she slept through the night. Outside, far below the building, the city was doing what the city always did. The lake was frozen along the edge, rimmed in pale ice, black water moving under the thin crust of it where the wind got in. Inside, on the 42nd floor, a man and a woman who had met because a hostess had sat. The wrong people at the wrong table lay next to each other in a bed that belonged to only one of them, for now, and breathed. The morning after they came home from Evanston, Lena woke up with Adrian's good hand still wrapped around hers under the covers, and she understood, lying there in the gray pre-dawn, that her life was no longer something that was happening to her.
It was something she was in. That was the difference.
For as long as she could remember, even before Tyler, even before the 2 jobs and the taped envelopes and the long drive up to Rockford on Sundays, Lena had been the kind of woman who endured things, who kept her head down, who took the shifts nobody wanted because the tips were better, who told her sister it was fine. Her whole adult life had been a long exercise in getting through. Surviving, it turned out, was a kind of cowardice you could dress up as virtue. You could tell yourself you were strong because you hadn't fallen apart, and never have to ask yourself the harder question, which was whether you had ever really chosen anything at all. She had chosen something now. She had chosen, in Irina's guest room in Evanston, to stay. She had chosen, the night before, to move her pillow down the hall. She had chosen, at some point she could not name precisely, to love a man she had every reason not to, and to want him to be better, and to believe he could be, and to be willing to help carry him there. That was not the same thing as surviving. That was the other thing. The thing she had forgotten was available to her. She got out of bed carefully, so as not to pull at the gauze on his hand, and she stood at the window in her gray cardigan and watched the sky turn pink over the lake, and she thought, I am 29 years old, and this is the first morning of my life I have woken up on purpose. The months that followed were not clean. She had expected them to be. She had expected, in some small corner of herself, that the night in Evanston would be the end of something, a line to cross, a chapter to close, and that on the other side of it would be a version of her life where the bad part was over and the good part could begin. That was a story she had told herself more than once. Things will get easier after the holidays. Things will get easier after Mom is settled. Things will get easier when Tyler stops calling. She had learned over and over that easier was not something that arrived. Easier was something you made, and only sometimes, and only by inches. Adrian's hand took almost 3 weeks to heal. There were 11 stitches at his jaw that left a thin white line he would carry for the rest of his life. And Lena caught herself tracing it with her thumb sometimes when they were sitting on the couch at night and he had fallen asleep with his head in her lap. He was a man who slept less than anyone she had ever known. On the nights he did sleep, he slept like somebody had taken a weight off him. The business of pulling back, he had warned her, was going to be slower and uglier than the business of being in. He had not lied about that either. There were meetings through January and February and March that he would not tell her about, that he would come home from with his jaw tight and his shoulders up around his ears. There were people he owed loyalty to who did not want him to change. There were men who had worked for his father, who had fed their children on the money Adrian was now trying to make clean, and who did not want to be told that the business was moving in a direction they could not follow. He handled them. She did not ask how. She had decided very early that there were questions she would ask and questions she would not, and she held that line. What she did ask about, and what he told her plainly, was the direction. The trucking company sold off the routes that had been used for the wrong things, and kept the ones that could be audited by a city inspector without anyone having to apologize. The clubs went up for sale, one at a time, to buyers who could document their money. The cash loan operation was wound down in the only way a cash loan operation could be wound down, by calling in what could be called in, forgiving what could not, and closing the storefronts at the end of their leases without renewing them. That last part cost Adrian somewhere north of $8 million in a single year. He didn't talk about it. Lena found the number by accident, looking for a pen on his desk one afternoon, and she did not mention it to him. What she did do was call Emily. She did it in February on a Tuesday afternoon, sitting in the living room with the lake white and frozen outside the window and a cup of tea going cold in her lap. She had not seen her sister since Thanksgiving more than a year earlier. She had spoken to her maybe 6 times since moving into the apartment. The conversations had been short. She had told Emily she had taken a consulting job. She had told Emily the pay was good. She had told Emily that Mom had been moved because the old place was understaffed. Emily, who was 23 and working her first real job and exhausted in the way young people are exhausted by the first thing they are trying to do well, had not pushed. Emily had wanted to believe her. Lena called her from the couch that February afternoon, and when Emily picked up, she said, "Emily, I need to tell you some things. Not all of them. Some of them. Is that okay?" Emily, on the other end of the line, was quiet for a second. "Is Mom okay?" "Yes." "Are you okay?" "Yes." "Okay." Lena told her some of it. She told her that she had met somebody. She told her that he was older, that he was wealthy, that he had been generous with their mother. She told her that the work he did was complicated and had not always been clean. She told her that it was becoming cleaner. She told her that the money that was paying for Lake Forest was his, and she was sorry for lying, and she would not lie again. She told her she had moved into his apartment. She told her she loved him. She did not tell her about Constantine. She did not tell her about the night in Evanston. She did not tell her about the car that had been parked on Emily's block in Milwaukee for 3 weeks in December and January, about which Emily had never known and would never know. When she was done, Emily was quiet for a long time. Lena? Yes. Are you safe? Yes, I am now. Is Mom safe? Yes, she's safer than she's ever been. Are you happy? That was the one Lena had to think about. Some of the time, she said finally. More of the time than I have been in a very long time. I'm not going to lie to you about that either. I'm not happy all day long. I don't think that's what happy is, Em. I think I used to think it was. I was wrong about that. Emily started to cry. Lena sat on the couch in the apartment on Lakeshore Drive and listened to her baby sister cry on the phone from an apartment in Milwaukee, and she did not try to stop her. After a minute, Emily said, I want to meet him. Okay. Not soon. Not this weekend, but I want to meet him before the end of the year. Okay, Em. And I want you to tell me if you are ever not safe. I don't care if it's 3 a.m. I don't care if I'm at work. You tell me. I will. Lena. Yes. I thought you were going to die. Last fall. I thought you were going to work yourself into a hospital and die. And I was going to be the one who found Mom's paperwork in a shoebox in your closet. I thought about it every day. Every day, Lena. I haven't told anyone that. So whatever this guy is, whatever kind of man he is, if he is the reason I don't have to think about that every day anymore, I am prepared to like him. I'm just telling you. Lena pressed her palm hard against her mouth for a second. Thank you, Em. Okay. Emily met Adrian in June. It was not, Lena had to admit later, a picture-perfect afternoon. They had lunch at a small Italian place on the north side, a place Adrian had picked specifically because nobody there knew who he was. Emily showed up in jeans and a denim jacket and a t-shirt that had the name of her office on it because she had been nervous and forgotten to change. Adrian was in a suit because he was always in a suit, and when he saw that Emily was in jeans, he excused himself 20 minutes into the meal, went to the men's room, came back without the jacket and without the tie, and rolled up his sleeves. Emily, watching this, caught Lena's eye across the table and raised her eyebrows, the half-inch that sisters use. Okay, the eyebrows said. Not what I expected. Adrian asked Emily about her job. He asked her specifically and carefully about a piece of software her team was rolling out, which he had apparently read about in a trade publication Lena hadn't known he subscribed to. Emily, who had prepared for the lunch by practicing, in her car, how she was going to interrogate him about his intentions, spent almost 40 minutes talking to him about rollout schedules and user adoption rates, and Lena watched her sister, for the first time in a decade, be seen by a man as a full person and not a younger sister of somebody else. On the way out of the restaurant, Emily pulled Lena aside in the little vestibule while Adrian settled the check. He's weird, Emily said. I know. Like weird in the sense that he listens. Men don't listen, Lena, like they just don't. I know, Em. Are you going to marry him? Lena looked at her sister. I don't know. Okay, okay. If you do, I want to be there. I don't want to be told about it 3 weeks later. Okay. And Lena. Yes. The thing he does, the thing he... It's changing, Em. Is it all the way changed? No, it's changing. When? By the end of next year, that's what he said. I believe him. Emily was quiet for a moment. Okay, she said. I'll trust you. Em, I'll trust you, Lena. You're the one who lived with him. I'm the one who had lunch with him. You tell me if it's changing. You tell me if it's not. Lena hugged her sister in the vestibule of a small Italian place on North Clark, and she thought for a second that she had not been hugged like that, hugged by somebody who was on her side without reservation, since she was a child. She married him in October, a little over a year after the wrong table at Marchetti's. It was a small ceremony. 22 people at a hall on the west side, a judge Adrian had known for 15 years, and Lena had met exactly twice. Emily as her only attendant, Pavel as his only one. Marisol wept in the second row from the moment the door opened and had to borrow a handkerchief from a man named Yuri, who produced one from an inside pocket without any embarrassment at all. Her mother was there. Gloria had driven her down. Her mother, on the day of the wedding, was having one of the good ones. One of the ones where she remembered Lena's name and the names of both her children and the name of Lena's first-grade teacher, and which cousin she had been told about getting married to whom, and what year it was, and who the president was. The doctors had told Lena carefully that these days were going to get rarer. Lena made a decision, while her mother was walking slowly on Gloria's arm toward a chair in the front row, that she was not going to ruin this day by letting herself think about that. Her mother sat in the chair. Her mother looked up at Lena in a cream dress, not navy, not black, cream, a color Lena would never in her previous life have chosen for herself. And her mother said, clearly and in her own voice, "Look at you, Lena Bean." Adrian, in a dark suit at the front of the room, turned his head for just a second when her mother said that, and Lena saw his throat work. They said what they said. The judge said what the judge said. Her mother held her hand on the way back down the short aisle and did not let go of it for almost 5 minutes. Adrian, who had told Lena a year earlier on a cold path by Belmont Harbor that he would never meet her mother, knelt down next to her chair at the end of the ceremony and took her mother's hand and said something to her very quietly that Lena would never, for the rest of her life, ask him the exact words of. Her mother nodded. Her mother put her free hand on his cheek, on the side with the thin white scar, and patted it once, the way a mother pats a son, and said, "Good boy." Adrian closed his eyes. It was the closest Lena had ever seen him to tears. He did not cry. He just closed his eyes and let her mother keep her hand on his face for as long as her mother wanted. Marisol, 2 rows back, cried harder. Later, Lena would think about that moment, her mother's hand on Adrian's face, as the real ceremony. The legal part had happened in front of the judge, but the part that married them, the part that made them kin to each other, had happened in a folding chair with a woman who would not always remember either of their names blessing them both on her way past. They spent their first year of marriage getting smaller. That was how Adrian put it, once, sitting on the balcony of the penthouse on a warm night in July, a glass of bourbon in his good hand, Lena in his lap with her head against his shoulder. They had sold 3 buildings that spring. They had given a very large amount of money to a hospital on the south side, not under Adrian's name. They had bought a small publishing house because Lena had wanted him to own something he could be proud of in daylight, and because she had turned out to have good instincts about books. They had started a fund, in Vasia's name and Artem's name, that paid for trade school for the kids of men who had worked at one time or another for Adrian's father. Smaller, Adrian said on the balcony that night. I used to think I had built something. Now I think I inherited a fire, and I've been trying for 20 years to put it out a bucket at a time. You're doing it, Lena said. Am I? You are. I'm watching you do it. It's a slow thing, Lena. That's okay. Slow is okay. You don't put out a fire in one night. You put it out until it goes out. He didn't answer. He put his chin on the top of her head. Below them, Lakeshore Drive was moving in red and white lines along the dark water. I used to think, he said after a while, that the only way for a man in my position to get out was to die or to leave the country. And now I think maybe there is a third way. It is slower and it costs more money. But it is there. Yes, you gave me that, Lena. No. You did. No, Adrian, I didn't give it to you. It was already in you. I just stayed in the kitchen. That's all. He laughed, the low, quiet laugh she had heard for the first time the night she'd told him his shoes were half a size too big, and he kissed the top of her head, and they sat there on the balcony for a long time and said nothing else. She got pregnant in January of the next year. She was 31. She had not expected to be a mother. She had assumed through most of her 20s that the life she had did not have room for a child, and she had made a kind of peace with that assumption the way a person makes peace with weather. When the test came back positive, she stood in the bathroom of the penthouse with the little plastic stick in her hand, and she did not know what she was feeling for almost a full minute. She felt eventually afraid, and then underneath the afraid, only a little underneath, not far, She felt something else. Something warm and small and steady, like a pilot light. She told Adrian at breakfast the next morning. He was in a gray sweater. He was drinking tea because it was a tea morning. She slid the little stick across the marble island on a folded paper towel. He looked at it for a long time. Lena. I know. Lena. I know, Adrian. I know. Breathe. He was not breathing. He had stopped. She watched him remember how. Are you happy? He said. I am scared, actually. Mostly. A little. Underneath, I think I'm happy. I'll tell you in a month. Okay? Are you happy? He put the paper towel down. He got up from the stool. He came around the island and he put his forehead against hers, the way he did sometimes now, and he put his hand, the one with the faint scar line across the knuckles, on her stomach, and he did not say anything for a long time. Yes, he said finally. I am. Their son was born in September. They named him Daniel because it was a name neither of their families had used, and because Lena had wanted to start a line of something rather than continue one. Daniel Volkov, 7 pounds 4 ounces, born at a hospital in Evanston, which Lena had chosen for reasons she didn't fully articulate at the time and later would understand were superstitious, with Adrian in the room holding her hand and a nurse named Karen who kept calling him Dad in a way that made Lena laugh every time. The first time Adrian held Daniel, he did it with the stiffness of a man who had not held a baby since he was a child himself. He sat in the chair by the window of the hospital room with Daniel in the crook of his arm, and he looked down at him for a long time without saying anything. And Lena watched from the bed and felt for a moment like she was looking through a window into a room she had not been invited to enter. Then Adrian looked up at her. Lena, he said. Yes. I was not... His voice caught. He cleared it. I was not sure until just now that a man like me was allowed to have this. Adrian, I know what I have done. I know. I know what I have ordered. I have not forgotten any of it. I do not want to forget any of it. I know. But this... He looked down at Daniel again. This is... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Lena reached her hand out across the space between the bed and the chair. He caught it with his free hand. Daniel, asleep, made the small, complicated face of an infant dreaming. Her mother died that November. It was peaceful, in the way those things can be peaceful. Gloria was with her. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Her mother had been moving in and out of herself for about a week. And on the Tuesday, she had been more out than in, and at 3:15 in the afternoon, she had gone to sleep in the armchair by the window with her hand on Gloria's arm, and she had simply not woken up again. Lena drove up to Lake Forest with Daniel in a car seat and Adrian at the wheel, because she had not wanted to sit in the back alone. Daniel slept the whole way. Lena cried for some of it, and not for other parts of it. Adrian drove with one hand and held her hand with the other, and he did not tell her that it was going to be okay, because he was not a man who said things like that, and she loved him for it. At the service, which they held in a small funeral home in Rockford because that was where her mother had wanted to be buried, Emily gave the reading. Marisol came up from the city with a casserole. Gloria sat in the second row in a navy blue dress and cried into a handkerchief with a violet embroidered on the corner, and afterwards she gave Lena a hug that lasted almost a full minute. Lena's cousin from Phoenix, who still owed her $4,000, made the trip. She did not mention the money. Lena had decided somewhere back in that first winter that it was not a debt she was ever going to collect. Adrian stood in the back with Daniel on his chest in a carrier that he had learned, with considerable concentration, how to put on himself. After the graveside, when most people had gone, Lena stood at the stone with Adrian next to her and Daniel, awake now, looking solemnly up at nothing in particular. Emily had walked back to the car. The light was going, the way it went on November afternoons in northern Illinois, pink and bronze and short. Lena knelt down. She put her hand on the grass, on the cold ground over her mother. "Mama," she said. Adrian stepped back, a step and a half, to give her the room. "Mama," Lena said, "I did it. I did some of the things you told me to do. I was careful with my whole self. I was, Mama, some of the time, not all of the time. He didn't get all of me. I kept the important parts." She took a breath. "He kept his too. You were right about that. You were right about him." Her mother, of course, did not answer. Lena stood up. She brushed the grass off the knees of her black slacks. Adrian stepped back up beside her and put his arm around her shoulders. Daniel, against his father's chest, made a small soft sound that was not crying but was on the way to crying. "Okay," Lena said, to nobody in particular. "Okay." They went home. 2 years after the wrong table. That was the phrase Lena kept coming back to in the quiet hours when Daniel was down for the night and Adrian was at the piano in the living room. He had bought a piano after Daniel was born because he had decided he wanted his son to hear real music played by a real person, not a recording. And she was folding laundry on the couch. 2 years. It felt at times like 3 decades. It felt, at other times, like a single very long Tuesday. Her life was not what it had been. She had not held a waitressing apron in almost 20 months. She had, on the other hand, sat in a meeting 3 weeks ago with the board of the publishing house in a conference room overlooking the river and made an argument about a manuscript she had read, and the board had taken her argument and the book was going to press in the spring. She had money. She did not think about money much anymore, which she understood now was the actual privilege of having money. The medical bills taped to the inside of her kitchen cabinet were gone. The cabinet was gone. The apartment was gone, rented to a young couple who had bought all her furniture from her for $600 cash and a bottle of wine. She had Adrian. She had him in the morning over eggs and in the middle of the night when Daniel cried and he was there before she was, padding down the hall in bare feet. She had him tired and in a suit and laughing, occasionally, a real laugh, when Daniel did something that only a baby was allowed to do. She had him in a way she would never, for the rest of her life, be casual about. She had him safely. That was the part she still sometimes stopped to marvel at. 2 years after the wrong table, Adrian Volkov was a man you could look up in a business magazine and find a story about his publishing house in. There were people who remembered the other things. There were people who remembered Constantine Reyes. There were people in other cities who still said Adrian's father's name the way you said the name of a storm. But in the places where Lena and Daniel lived their actual lives, at the pediatrician's office, at the grocery store, at the quiet park near the apartment where Daniel liked to look at ducks, there was only Adrian, a man in a long dark coat holding his son. She thought sometimes about the version of herself who had sat down at that table at Marchetti's on a Thursday night in December, 2 years earlier, with $43 in her account and a pair of borrowed heels that hurt her left pinky toe. She thought about what she would say to that woman if she could reach back through time and sit down across from her for 5 minutes. She wouldn't say, "Don't worry." That would be a lie. There had been plenty to worry about. She wouldn't say it's going to be okay. It hadn't been okay. It had been several different things, some of them wonderful and some of them terrible, and it had cost a lot of people more than they had wanted to pay. Vasya had still lost Yuri. Artem had still had a mother who did not get to see him grow old. Konstantin had died in a house in a suburb of Chicago on a Friday night in December, and whatever he was and whatever he had done, Lena had not forgotten that he was a man, and she would not. She would say, instead, sitting across from that younger, thinner, tireder version of herself in the navy dress, "Don't stand up." When the man across the table says, sit down, sit down. Not because he's right, not because he's powerful. Sit down because you are allowed to stay in a place you wandered into by accident. You are allowed to eat the food. You are allowed to tell the truth about your $43. You are allowed to be a person in a room you can't afford. She would say, the man is going to be more than you can handle, and you're going to handle him anyway. And the handling is going to change both of you, and not all of the changing is going to feel good. She would say, you don't have to earn your life. You don't have to work 2 jobs to deserve a roof. You don't have to apologize for taking up space. You have been apologizing for taking up space since you were 8 years old. Stop. Start tonight. Start at that table. And she would say, this was the one she had thought about hardest. The one she had written down once in a notebook, and then crossed out, and then written down again. The worst thing that ever happened to your mother was not the disease. The worst thing was that she spent 59 years thinking her job was to be small for other people. Don't do that. Don't do it on her behalf. Don't do it on yours. If love finds you, and it will not look the way you expected, let it be big. Let it be the size it actually is. That was what she would have said. Instead, she folded laundry on a Tuesday night in the penthouse while Adrian played Chopin in the next room. Daniel was asleep in the nursery down the hall. The lake was full dark outside the windows. She could hear, under the music, the faint hum of the city doing what the city always did. Adrian finished the piece. He did not start another one. She heard him close the lid of the piano and come into the living room, and she felt the couch shift when he sat down next to her. Lena? Come to bed. In a minute. I've got 4 more shirts. I'll do the shirts. You do not know how to fold a shirt. I know how to fold some shirts. Adrian? Lena. She laughed once, and she leaned her head against his shoulder. He put his arm around her. They sat like that for a while, not talking, and outside the wind came off the lake and rattled, faintly, at the glass. 2 years, he said, after a while. I know. Are you? He paused. He was not a man who asked questions he didn't know how to finish, but she understood this one because she had been asking it of herself for most of the afternoon. Yes, she said. Yes, what? Yes to all of it, Adrian. Yes to the table. Yes to the wine. Yes to Yuri. Yes to the apartment. Yes to the lake path. Yes to Evanston. Yes to the guest room I didn't sleep in after January. Yes to the vows. Yes to Daniel. Yes to my mother's hand on your face. Yes, 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 all of it. I know what you're asking. Yes. He was quiet for a long moment. I didn't deserve yes, he said. Any of those times. No, she said honestly. You didn't. Neither did I. That's not how it works, Adrian. Nobody deserves this. You just get a chance at it, and you either take the chance or you don't. We took it. We took it. Yes. He kissed the top of her head, the way he had the first night she'd moved her pillow. She closed her eyes against his shoulder, and she listened to him breathe. Down the hall, somewhere in the dark, her son made a small noise in his sleep and then settled. She thought, not for the first time, and not for the last, that this was what she had traded her old life for. A man who was not a good man, but who was trying every day to be a less bad one, and who was mostly succeeding, and who some of the time actually was good, and who was hers. A son who would grow up in a house with a piano in it, and with a father who played it, and who would never know, if Lena and Adrian could help it, the full shape of what his father had been before. A life where her sister called on Sundays. A life where the bills were paid and where there were no bills, actually, because Adrian had quietly put them all in a system she no longer had to look at. A life where her mother had died with a nurse holding her hand in a room she could see the garden from. A life, in short, that she had chosen. That was the part that mattered. That was, she was coming to believe, the only part that ever mattered. You could be born into anything. A town in Illinois, a family in Odessa, a restaurant on a Thursday night in the rain. What counted was what you said yes to after that. What you walked toward instead of away from. What you were willing to sit down at a table and eat, knowing the menu didn't have prices on it, and you didn't have the money anyway. Lena Carter had walked into a restaurant called Marchetti's 2 years earlier as a woman who did not belong anywhere she went. She had walked out as a woman who had decided to belong, by force of her own will, wherever she pleased. She had built the rest of it from there. Brick by brick, yes by yes, no by no, mistake by mistake. She had built it with a man whose sins she did not fully know the count of, and a son whose future she was going to spend the rest of her life trying to make safe, and a mother who was buried in Rockford, and a sister who was now, finally, her sister, and a best friend who was still going to bring the casseroles. She had built a life, imperfect, unfinished, partly stolen, mostly earned, hers. And in the quiet of a Tuesday night on the 42nd floor of a building she had once walked past without noticing, she leaned against her husband's shoulder on a couch covered in half-folded laundry, and she let herself, for the first time all the way, with nothing held back, be exactly where she was.